The main character, a white-haired girl with blue eyes, was born from the union of a poor ice magician and a hybrid, a wolf girl. She finds a medicinal plant and is happy about it, saying that she is very lucky today because her family is able to survive by selling medicinal herbs, which the girl hunts for in the snowy fields, so poverty does not cause them any special problems. The girl, putting the grass in the basket, says that she will give it to her mother because it is useful for pregnant women. Suddenly, the half-wolf hears someone laughing and gets scared. A trio of wolves pay attention to her and, pointing a finger at the girl, begin to mock her. The little creature begins to tremble in fear. But the guys continue to make fun of the girl, and one of them asks if she went out to nibble grass, while the other asks if she is a vegetarian. The third insists that she can't even hide her ears. Pure-blooded wolves insult and cruelly treat the main character. One of the guys throws a hard object at her head, causing the half-breed to start bleeding. But her abuser doesn't seem very concerned, stepping on the herbs that the main character collected for her mother. When she tries to pick up what she spent so much time on, the wolf asks what's the matter and whether her legs are holding her back from fear. He again wants to hurt the girl, but she unknowingly defends herself and thereby hurts her offender. Looking at her hand, the main character notices that the grass she was holding has turned to ice. The wolf is furious that he was wounded and asks how the mudblood dares to raise a hand against him, but the little creature screams for him not to come closer because one more step and this ice flow. But the guy doesn't let her finish her sentence and starts laughing, asking his friend if he saw it. He also asks the question, what is the use of stupid ice magic in lands where it is everywhere? And maybe the girl is acting stupid because she is only half wolf. The wolf approaches the girl and violently throws her against a tree. At the moment of the impact, an unknown image flashed through her head. There was a human soul in it, and the little creature realized that this was her past life, and at the same moment, she remembered the novel that she loved to read. The main character of Little Red Riding Hood was the head of the half-breed dragons. She met a half-breed wolf during the war with wolves, and he asked for his salvation because he wanted to bring his older sister back to life. Little Red Riding Hood liked the begging guy, and she made him hers. Lying on the bed with a book, the girl claims that this is exactly the story she wanted to read and praises the author, saying what a beautiful look the attractive guy with ears has. As the novel progresses, the white-haired, only half-wolf gradually gets along with the Red Riding Hood. The main character really liked the hero from this novel, who cried sweetly, and she dreams of seeing this in reality, but now that her dream had come true, she didn't look very happy. The girl could not believe that she was reborn in the novel that she loved so much in a past life. Realizing that this place is the world of Little Red Riding Hood, she quickly jumps up from her seat, knocking her offender down and runs away. The same one after the little creature shouts for it to stop and threatens that it will catch it. Only Half-Wolf associates the author with a madman, although she herself said that she wants to see this in reality. At home, the girl's mother is waiting for her daughter, Eve, speaking to her unborn son, Zion, that until his older sister comes, they will not see a warm dinner. Eva remembers the events of the novel and realizes that the main character is her unborn brother. In the novel Little Red Riding Hood, where people live together with half-breeds, half-wolves, and half-dragons, had strong hatred for each other. The feud began when the wolf stole the heart of the dragon's head. Having lost the heart that she wanted to give to her lover, the head died because she could not control the power overwhelming her due to anger and grief. According to legend, Little Red Riding Hood's brother also had only one heart, and in the end he would die because he was unable to curb his power. She blamed the wolves for this and organized a cleanup in the north. In this novel, Eva was the sister of the main character, who was put down like a dog by Little Red Riding Hood. Standing with an axe, the main character associates the author with a madman, because she already had a difficult childhood and her future will also be bleak. We are thinking about escaping, because the girl does not want to fall into eternal sleep. The main character's mother hears a strange sound on the street and decides to see what it is. When her mother asks what is happening, Ava replies that the wolves damaged their house and said that if the family did not leave, they would be killed. Eva comes to the decision that the meeting of the two main characters cannot be allowed, and for this, she needs to leave the house, keeping her rebirth secret in order to protect everyone. The mother hugs her daughter and calms her down, saying that if they go deep into the forest, it will be safer there and she will take care of her daughter. But someone seemed to laugh at the plans of the main character, because after the birth of Zion, my mother felt worse. There was no wolf nearby to help deliver the half-breed. Holding her daughter's hand, the mother argues that good things happen to good children, so instead of hitting someone, you should show kindness to them. Ava looks at her mother with tears in her eyes. The white-haired lady tells her daughter that she is sorry and falls into eternal sleep. The main character cannot hold back her tears, realizing that from now on, this is her reality. Both parents left them, so the girl herself will protect Zion at any cost. After many years of living deep in the forest, Ava comes across a little girl lying in the snow, and you wonder what a child is doing in such a place. The main character notices that the girl has a fever and hopes that someone else will find and help her. But remembering her mother's words that good things happen to good children, she decides to help. Either she felt sorry for the girl who was left in the cold, or her mother's words had an impact, but Eva picked her up and carried her home, not understanding what consequences this would lead to. A couple of days later, the main character is met by her younger brother. The older sister asks him if everything was fine and if strangers came. The little half-wolf replies that everything was fine. The older sister strokes the boy with white hair on the head, saying how smart he is, and asks if the girl she found in the snow woke up. But Zion sadly replies that she has been sleeping for a long time and thinks that the girl has not rested yet. But 3 days have already passed. Eva sends her little brother for cold water and a towel, saying that it is most likely because of the fever. But even the best herbs do not help the sick baby, and taking her to the hospital will be difficult given their circumstances. The main character lies down on the bed next to the girl and reflects on the correctness of her actions. But leaving the child there was also dangerous. Eve places her hand on top of the sick girl's and apologizes for not being able to help her anymore. At the touch of her savior, the girl comes to her senses. Eva asks about her well-being, but when the child opens his eyes, the main character notices that they are red as rubies, and in this world, only one race has red eyes. At that time, the younger brother returns with water, and Eva hides him behind her back. If the girl remembers correctly after her death, the one who took Zion was the main character of Little Red Riding Hood. In the novel, Little Red Riding Hood asked the guy who she was to him. He spoke, while crying pitifully, that the girl is his patron. Eve hears those very words now from the baby she saved. She claims that calling her a patroness is a little overkill and glossed over, but that if this girl is really a Red Riding Hood, then why did she end up in the North so early? After all, in the original story, their first meeting took place when they were adults. The oblique lady wonders whether the course of events has changed. Her brother pokes his head out from behind her, but Eva tells him not to show himself and pushes him back behind her. The little half-wolf doesn't understand why he can't see her and asks if they can talk later. The main character understands that if they meet now, everything will end as in the original story, and tells Xian that she might be scared, so he should wait outside. The girl, sitting on the bed, apologizes to her patron for saying this only now and thanks her for saving her. Ava says that this is nothing because that action was right. The young lady was worried, but the little girl was fine. The main character asked herself if the girl seemed dangerous to her, because while the child thought that if she and Zion did not see each other, then her plan would continue to be implemented. The plan to survive this crazy story is to buy a castle, but not as described in fairy tales. For their safety, Eve would like to live in the human world. Only half the wolf remembers his father, because intermediaries help only those wolves whose identities are known to enter the country. No one will let in poor commoners without a name. But in any world, nothing is impossible if you have money, so her ambitious goal is to buy a castle together with Zion and move to the world of people. That's why the young lady memorized the book on medicinal herbs left to her by her father and saved money by selling valuable herbs. However, she did not know that the events of the story were mixed up. If she returned Little Red Riding Hood home safe and without any incident, then only time would separate her from a happy ending. The main character already imagines how brightly the sun will shine for her in the human world. But her thoughts are interrupted by the girl she saved and asks where she is and who she is. Eva, shocked by what she heard, asks what Little Red Riding Hood is saying. She hopes that line doesn't mean the same thing, and he will think that the author could not have done this. But the little girl says with annoyance that she doesn't remember anything. The main character leans on the floor in despair and curses the author. Then she asks if the girl really doesn't remember anything at all, but in response, she hears that the child only remembers that she was hot. It looks like something happened to Little Red Riding Hood before she lost consciousness, but Eve wonders if that's why she lost her memory. She already imagines the scene as she tells the girl that her name is Rachel, and she is a half-dragon warrior who controls fire, and her brother is the ruler of the South, and now she can return home. So she can't say for sure, and therefore wonder whether she will need to take the baby there herself. But this option immediately disappears, since for a wolf to venture into the lands of dragons is akin to suicide. The child apologizes and claims that he cannot pay his savior in any way. Eva says that this is not a problem, and the little one doesn't have to pay. But the girl claims that she really wants to thank her patroness. She asks if she can stay until her memory returns. And the main character can already hear the sound of her plan being carried away into the distance, and then life is sliding into the pit of poverty. At that time, the knights are running around the forest looking for the Red Riding Hood. Their master asks if they have found it, but they answer that they have not yet. The man asks what they are doing after all. A black-haired man with ruby eyes orders his servants to immediately find the girl, or they will lose their heads. He wonders to himself where Rachel is. Eva is walking with a Red Riding Hood through the market when a little girl addresses the main character as the patroness lady. She says that Rachel can sleep as her sister. Then the girl asks her patron sister where they are going, and she replies that they are going to see a doctor for an examination and at the same time buy clothes. And then the little lady asks why they need to hide their faces, but the answer is that otherwise they will catch a cold and anything can happen. Eva understands that this is a stupid excuse to match those in the novel Little Red Riding Hood. The girls are approached by a nice-looking man with purple hair and greeted. The main character asks why he came so late because he said that he would bring good goods today. There's a secret alley near the square, which few people know about. Eva sneaks here to sell herbs to her regular customers. A man examines the product and sees that it is of good quality. Firegrass grows only in mountainous areas and is highly flammable, emitting a red flame. The buyer asks how much he can buy it for, but hearing the price of 10 gold bars, he is shocked and asks why it is so expensive. The main character asks what's surprising about this, because this is firegrass of the highest quality, and she won't give a discount even if he buys in bulk. During the transaction, Eva must hide her face and change her voice so as not to reveal her identity. Otherwise, she will be looked down upon, if only because she is a girl. However, only half the wolf claims that there is a way to buy it much cheaper, and the man wonders what this method is. Eva invites him to examine the girl next to her. Looking at the baby, the buyer asks who she is, and in response he hears that it is the seller's sister. But the man continues to ask questions and asks why the merchant brought her here. But Eva tells him to do what she asks because he is a doctor. The stranger greets the girl and asks what her name is. I assure her that everything is fine and she shouldn't worry. Putting his hand on the child's forehead, he asks the little girl if she is an obedient girl. After the examination, the doctor clarifies whether Little Red Riding Hood said that she doesn't know why she lost consciousness and that she doesn't remember anything. The main character, adjusting Rachel's scarf, says that she doesn't feel well right now. The stranger is not sure, but the consequences of the injury seem serious to him. In such cases, patients usually regain their memory within a couple of days. The man asked what exactly happened to the girl, and moreover, her temperature was unusually high. Eva says she had a fever a couple of days ago, so maybe it hasn't subsided yet. The doctor begins to suspect the main character because a child, the captain's younger sister, has disappeared in the southern region. Only half the wolf understands that he has already figured out who she is. The stranger asks if she knows about the relations between the North and South. I scream out that, of course, she knows, because she is also a wolf, and it would be strange if she didn't know, and asks if this concerns her. The man claims that he does not know what the trader is getting, but he must be careful and leaves. Eva thinks that his reaction is quite expected, and we need to quickly return the girl to where she belongs. After all, if this continues, the dragons will finish off the main character. Rachel is worried about her patron, who suggests they go home and asks what the little girl would like for lunch. In response, she hears that the girl will do anything if Eva cooks it. The lady with white hair notices that the aura of the Red Riding Hood is incredibly sweet and encourages herself that everything will be fine and the girl will definitely not kill her patroness. The girl looked at the rack of one of the stalls and asked what kind of thing was there. The main character replied that this is a dream catcher and it helps to catch nightmares. Rachel's gloomy red eyes reminded Eve of the plot of the novel, where Little Red Riding Hood, having lost her only older brother, never slept peacefully again. As soon as she closed her eyes, the same nightmare immediately began to torment her. Only after meeting Zion was she able to overcome pain and suffering. The main character asks if the girl wants a dream catcher. She tries to refuse because she doesn't want her sister to spend money on her, but Eva tells the girl to stand still, and she goes and buys this thing and then gives it to the little girl. They say that from now on, she will only have good dreams. Rachel thanks her patron sister, and when she asks if they will go home now, that Little Red Riding Hood with a sincere smile on her face answers yes. In this troubled time, Eve herself, without understanding it, became the savior of the heroine who would finish her off. Eva comes home and is met by her brother and Little Red Riding Hood. The main character runs up to her and asks how the day came and how many herbs she sold. The white-haired lady talks about her successes and reports that today she also stopped at the market on her way home. She tells the kids that they are so cute and asks if they were playing. Sion replies that now he can help the main character braid her hair. She replies that she will wait and asks in a whisper whether her brother showed his ears to Little Red Riding Hood. He didn't do this, and she was worried by the thought that the girl still didn't suspect anything. But judging by her reaction, the white-haired lady concluded that Little Red Riding Hood had not yet found out their secret. The moment Eve decided to take Rachel under her wing, they gave her a new name, Ruby. The little girl claims that she can also braid her hair, and the main character says that she will expect hairstyles from her. Then she, saying that it is time to cook dinner, asks the kids to clean the house. Although the white-haired lady has read novels where the name of the Red Riding Hood is written, she cannot so easily use it in communication. The main character is happy that the children got along and notices that Ruby's eyes shine like rubies and considers it very beautiful. Eva, having prepared the food, wishes you bon appetit. After they sat down at the table, Robbie asks the main character to give her hand. Zion is surprised and asks her sister why the girl only eats cold food and why they hold hands at the table. But the fact is that those who are vulnerable to the cold, like him and Zion, gravitate towards warmth, and food is no exception. When the lady with white hair served the little girl a hot meal, she looked a little worried. The main character thought that she was tired of eating the same thing for 3 days in a row. But Little Red Riding Hood said everything was fine. Eve was a little upset by the sad expression on Rachel's face, but when she saw that the girl had eaten everything, she calmed down. However, that night, the heat from the food combined with her own unusually high body temperature, causing her to become ill. The main character thought about the ferocity of the fire element in dragons and reproached herself for not guessing earlier. Luckily, exposure to the cold during the day cooled her down and she recovered quickly. Eve answers Sion's question by saying that Ruby hasn't developed a fever yet, so she can only eat cold food, and pats the baby on the head, telling her to eat up. The brother begins to be jealous of his sister and asks what about him. The white-haired lady strokes her brother's cheek and tells him to eat more too. The next morning, while the children are still sleeping, Eva is already getting ready for work, but she hears Ruby calling her and asking if her patron is going to the market. The main character hugs the baby and asks why she woke up so early. She also claims that she will be back soon. Little Red Riding Hood asks Eva not to leave and to sleep with her a little longer. But if the main character doesn't go, she won't earn money. A little girl asks why her patron needs a lot of money. The same one in the future wants to run away before Ruby finishes her off, but she can't answer that way. So she says that this is all so that they can move to a better place. Then the girl takes out an expensive-looking ring from her pajamas and says that she picked it up in the forest. She apologizes for going into the forest, even though the white-haired lady asked her not to go out without permission. Eva warns the girl that if she walks alone, she will be attacked. She understands that Ruby is bored at home, but does not know how to resist this cutie. The sister says that she will return early, and they will all play snowballs together. Little Red Riding Hood is very happy about this. The main character asks if the little girl will wait for her. Then she invites the girl to go get some more sleep, because she is still sleepy, and she will keep the ring that the little girl gave her. Having said goodbye to her patron, Ruby turns around and heads towards the fireplace, saying what a white-haired lady was strangling, because she hinted that she would sell the ring. Lighting the fireplace with the help of her fiery powers, the girl says that excessive stupidity is also a sin. A few days ago in the southern region, Ruby was lying in bed in not very good condition. An elderly lady, who was most likely a doctor, said that it was an idiopathic disease that caused fever. They tried so many treatments, but the child was no better. The lady tells the girl's brother to prepare for the worst. The guy is amazed by these words, and his fire element gets out of control. The maid shouts to her master to control his inner fire element, otherwise both relatives will be in danger, and asks him to take a deep breath and calm down. Then the captain says not to worry, because it's not so difficult for him to control himself, and asks the doctor to take care of Rachel. The little girl calls her brother, and he excitedly asks about her well-being. The little girl wants to touch her brother and extends her hand to him. The guy already wants to touch his sister, but at the last moment he changes his mind because the growth of the fire element inside the girl will become a threat to both of them. The captain only says that he did not expect his sister to suddenly lose consciousness. Rachel was very upset by her brother's actions. The same one asked if she was sure that she was feeling well. Little Red Riding Hood replies that she just had a nightmare. The guy was wondering what she dreamed about that night. From that day on, the legend that dragons only have one heart spread throughout the city. She thought that these tales were somehow connected with the captain, so she insisted that she would save him no matter the cost. When the elder brother came to his sister's room, he saw only a note on the floor of the balcony in which it was written that the girl would return when she sorted out the rumors that had been spread about the captain. It was only weeks later that it became known that she had gone north. When the guy went looking for his sister, his servant reports that a similar girl was seen in the square, and people say that she was with a stranger who hid his face. The guy asks if his ward is sure of this. He answers positively, and adds that the kidnapper bought her a dream catcher. The captain is very angry and says that the criminal is hoping to lure his sister with a trinket, considering this impudence. He tells his servants that he will go there personally. Walking along a snow-covered path, he asks in his thoughts how the vile wolf dares to approach his sister. At that time, Eva returns home and her nose itches. The girl wonders if anyone remembers her. But then she remembers that the children must have been tired of waiting, so it's time for her to go home. One man turns to the main character, saying that he is in a hurry and asking if she is selling anything interesting today. The white-haired lady understands that this is another drug addict. She may be poor, but Eva was raised well, so she doesn't get involved in dirty dealings. Only the half-wolf tells the stranger to get lost. Her moral principles do not allow her to get involved with addicts, but the main reason is that they are all bad people. The drug addict notices the ring hanging on the girl's neck and says that it looks expensive, asking for an expensive item to be sold because it does not suit the girl. Eva is furious about this, and the stranger continues to ask questions. He asks about the price of the ring. The main character replies that by selling it, if the man gives her 50 million gold bars right now, the same one did not expect such a price and says that it is unrealistic, and then asks if the merchant despises him. And threateningly, he disappeared and asked if he wanted to get hit in the face. He got Eva, and she decides to calm the guy down using ice magic. She hates drug addicts because of cases like this. The girl quickly deals with that idiot, and thinking that she had no plans to look at such an abomination, she needs to quickly return to her beautiful Rachel and Zion. She turns to the drug addict and adds that even if he brings money, the girl will not give up the ring, because it is priceless to her. On the way home, the main character thinks that she will give the ring to Ruby as soon as she returns. Although the little girl insisted that she found it by accident, there is a possibility that it was her personal item. The white-haired lady also notices that the dragon captain still hasn't found out where his sister is. She expected this to happen sooner. But as soon as a girl thinks about it, goosebumps run down her skin. But this cannot continue for long, and it would be good to keep it a secret from Ruby that they are wolves, because Rachel herself will definitely not guess. They say that the captain loves his sister very much, so Eva decided that the search would not take much time. Although their house is difficult to find, because it is deep in the forest, and the main character also told the children not to go out for a walk. Suddenly, the white-haired lady realizes that she looks like a kidnapper who is keeping children captive. The girl notices that someone is following her, and since he tracked her in the forest, he should not be underestimated. Eve takes an apple from the basket and freezes it. She looks around and says that she knows the stranger is hiding, so let him come out. At that time, the children are sitting quietly at home, Ruby is writing something, and Xian is playing with toys. The boy with white hair becomes cold, and Little Red Riding Hood asks herself why he is always cold. She turns up the fire in the fireplace. Suddenly the girl has a familiar feeling. She takes off and tells Xian that she needs to go out. The guy reminds Ruby that sister does not allow her to go out without permission. But she screams that in such a situation, there is no point in remaining obedient, and she must be saved. The boy with white hair does not understand who the little girl is talking about. Little Red Riding Hood, running out of the house, answers to herself that she will save only one person, their sister. The main character is still in the forest, and thinks who could be chasing her. She suggests that it could be Little Red Riding Hood's brother, but immediately refutes the fact because the dragon would have immediately shown up and would not have been spying. Then she thinks about the possibility that the doctor turned them over to the wolves. Something moves in the bushes, and the girl throws an apple there, but there is no sound of a fall, but Eva does not believe that anyone could resist such a blow. She tells the stranger to come out and tell him what he needs, but he doesn't show up. The main character didn't even hope that the pursuer would show up so easily, but when the girl turns around and looks into the thicket, she sees a bunch of eyes looking at her. She thought that 1 or 2 people were following her, but there were many more of them. Eve realizes that she cannot cope alone, and at the same moment, fire spreads through the forest. In the original story, Rachel carried out a massacre, and the main character is already beginning to assume that she attacked her because she was hit by an apple and is looking around trying to find the baby. But he only sees her older brother. Eva understands that he seems to have misunderstood, but she is choking and cannot even say a word. The guy tells her to stop pretending to be a fool. The main character replies that she did nothing wrong. The captain tells her not to dare joke with him because he has no mercy and patience to listen to the girl's nonsense. He had already gotten used to the idea that the white-haired lady was a kidnapper. Only half the wolf thinks it's unfair. She grabs the captain's hand and, filled with determination, screams for him to at least listen first. The same one is very surprised by the girl's actions and feels some danger. After a moment, the flame goes out and Eve feels a loss of strength. The main character says that she tried to take care of the guy's sister and no money is enough to pay her for her kindness. She says the captain is a cruel bastard. Only half the wolf loses consciousness, and the gentleman with ruby eyes prevents her from falling. At that moment, Ruby runs up to them and asks how the man dared to hurt her sister. She calls her brother a villain. Eva wakes up at home and thinks of everything as a dream. Rachel screamed and then ran up to her. The main character remembers the captain's face when his sister called him a villain. After this, the white-haired lady realizes that it was not a dream and that crazy dragon was there. She hears someone running towards her. It's Ruby and Xian. The kids jump on their sister and hug her. Brother asks if she's okay, and sister asks if she's feeling better. Eva, touched by his opinion of the children, thanks them for their care and begins to calm the children down. Zion, with tears in his eyes, says that he was very scared because he thought that his sister was dead. Ruby adds that he wasn't the only one who thought so. The two of them looked pitifully at the main character, so I thought what a huge elephant they had made out of a molehill. In her thoughts, she asked the children to stop because she was still alive. She hugs her angels, saying that everything is fine with her, although she herself almost burst into tears when she saw how worried they were. The boy with white hair says that his brother left for a while and said that he would be back soon. Eve doesn't understand who Zion is talking about, but then she realizes that he means Little Red Riding Hood's older brother. She remembers that when she touched his hand, she felt as if all her strength had been sucked out of her, and checks to see if she had ears and a tail, because if they had seen the true nature of the main character, she would not have woken up. The captain is just returning to the house and notices that the door is of terrible quality and is not at all secure. The moment the glances of Eva and the guy crossed, the girl was speechless. Little Red Riding Hood's older brother, with a smile on his face, notices that the main character has woken up and says that he thought he wouldn't wait. The half-breed only now had a chance to take a closer look at him. She didn't know that he was so attractive. The guy noticed Eva's look and asked if there was something on his face. She replied that he didn't and apologized. And then she invited the captain to follow her. They all sat down at the same table. There was ice in the dragon's cups because hot food could make them sick. The children stayed close to the white-haired lady. An uneasiness hung in the air, so Rachel's older brother began to speak. He said his name was Noel. The guy had a lot of questions, but first he decided to apologize for what happened in the forest. Eve replied that there was nothing wrong with that, but thought to herself that he was more polite and kind than she thought, and that she seemed to know nothing at all about dragons. She looked at her little brother and understood why Noel attacked her. After all, in his place, the main character would be distraught to learn that her Siona was kidnapped, but she still thinks that it cannot be denied that it was too much. Because the guy almost killed her, she is thinking about compensation for all the troubles caused. Yes, she looked at the captain's face and immediately thought that he himself would have done for compensation. Her wolf instincts make themselves felt. The guy excitedly asks if the white-haired girl is feeling well, because her face is all over. But the main character does not allow the guy to finish his sentence, saying that everything is fine and she was just thinking about something. She asks what happened after all. Noel apologizes for such a late explanation and says that she is actually Rachel's older brother. His little sister suddenly disappeared, which is why he came all the way here. But the girl does not understand what is happening and asks who Rachel is. The captain asks the girl why she is pretending that they are strangers. But Little Red Riding Hood hugs her benefactress and tells her about Noel's strangeness, because he calls her his sister. Eve understands that that handsome guy is really the girl's brother, but she cannot say that she knew about it, so she will have to pretend to be stupid. She asks Noel how she can trust him if the girl insists it's not true, but he assures that he is not lying and asks the girl to give her hand. The little girl doesn't trust the guy, so he hesitates, but after Eva's words, she extends her hand. When their hands stop close to each other, a flame flares up on the older brother's hand. Rachel quickly tears her hand off and says that she was very scared because fire came out of her hand. The main character calms Little Red Riding Hood by saying that she will protect the girl. Zion turns to his sister, and she, thinking that he too was afraid of the flame because she was seeing it for the first time, the girl does not know how to explain everything to him. But she doesn't even have time to say anything before Rachel turns her head towards her and says that she's scared. She asks Zion to take her hand as well. The boy does not understand why he should take her hand, but still takes her hand in his. Noel doesn't understand why his sister doesn't recognize him. While the main character asks the child if she feels better, she answers that yes, and then he turns to his brother with a smug grin. While the fire is burning in the fireplace, the older brother asks Rachel why she still doesn't remember him, but the girl simply turns away from her brother, to which he simply puts his hand to his face and sighs. Ava sympathizes with the guy, because now for his sister he is a villain. She asks Noel not to be upset, because when they first met, the girl didn't remember anything. Seeing how upset Noel was, the main character decided to tell him the whole story of their first meeting. Upon learning that Rachel had lost consciousness, the guy got angry and thought that it was all because of the damned wolves. Eve understands that they are finished if the captain finds out that they are wolves too. The brother asks if the white-haired girl is okay, but she replies that everything is okay and understands that he is worried about what happened. The guy says that he had to put out the fire, but there are problems with that. Noel Ramier is considered the strongest hero in history. He is endowed with extraordinary magic. He is described as someone who can conquer raging flames with just one heart. However, this also means that it is difficult for him to overcome his own emotions and control his powers. The fire, which was difficult for him to control, was extinguished by Eve. The girl wonders if this happened because she has the ability to freeze. After all, if so, there are many magicians whose powers exceed hers. She thinks that Noel might not know about this. The main character decides to ask if this happened because of her ability to freeze. After all, as far as she knows, there are many wolves in the north with similar strength. Noel suspiciously asks if the girl is a wolf, but Arda says that it's just a guess, and she is. But the girl cannot say this. She practiced saying that she is not a wolf, but a human, many times, but now she could not squeeze out a word. She tried to say it again, but she was interrupted mid-sentence by Little Red Riding Hood. With tears in her eyes, she asked her sister to drive the stranger away. But Eva began to assure the little girl that the guy was not a stranger. After all, they are so similar to each other. Natalie just shook her head and said that he had offended her benefactress, which means he was bad, and asked Zion what he thought about it. The little brother began to nod and agree, saying that Ruby's brother was bad because he offended Eve. They both begged for Noel to be kicked out. Little Red Riding Hood claims that he is big and therefore scary and his eyes are red. The white-haired boy with white hair agrees with her. Well, then he notices that Ruby has the same eyes, but when she looks at him with a murderous look, he gets scared. The captain didn't know what to do, but the main character replies that her memories will soon return, so she asks the guy not to worry. Then the brother says that he will touch his sister lightly and it will not hurt. But Rachel turns away from him and hugs Eve tighter, saying that she doesn't like the black-haired man and she will live with her sister. The main character in her thoughts asks Little Red Riding Hood not to talk nonsense and says that she is causing inconvenience to her brother. Ruby glares at her brother. The white-haired lady, noticing this, turns the little girl towards her and tells her not to look so angrily at her brother. But the girl shouts that if she needs to leave, she will take the benefactress with her and asks her to go too. Even though Rachel is adorable, Ava says it's time for the baby to go home, which causes the baby to start crying. The main character tried to reject her as gently as possible in order to return her home as quickly as possible. Noel understands that there is no choice. He asks the white-haired lady to do him a favor. The girl already understands where this is all leading and indignantly asks the captain what he means. The guy says that it won't take long until Rachel gets used to it and trusts him. Eve is thinking about this. The little devil inside her tells her that there will be no second chance to meet such a handsome man and asks if he is not her type. The little devil claims that the girl should take the opportunity and do as she wants. The angel objects because if Noel finds out the truth, then the main character will be killed. Eva is already preparing for refusal because although one can only dream of such a cute guy, if he finds out that she is a wolf, she will be cooked on fire. But then the guy says that he understands that he committed an unforgivable act, and it's a shame to ask the girl for a favor, but he begs her to do it for Rachel's sake. The main character's heart almost jumps out from this. She says that it will be quite difficult because she has personal reasons. Noel claims that he will repay her kindness, and the white-haired lady asks if he will repay her with money. After the captain says yes, the girl asks the children to leave them for a while. When Rachel's brother is about to leave the house, he says goodbye to the main character and hopes that she will consider the terms that they discussed, and I repeat that he was very guilty, and he is incredibly sorry. Eva says that if she were in his place, she would do the same. This guy's behavior was unexpected for the main character because she thought that the dragon captain would refuse the arrogant one, and he even bowed to her. The guy, a little embarrassed, says that he knows that it is indecent to ask such a thing, but could the white-haired lady take his hand again? He adds that he didn't mean to offend the girl and just wants to make sure. Eva understands the guy and extends her hand to him, but they are interrupted by Rachel asking why this guy is still here. She hugs Eve and glares at her brother. The captain upsetly says that he will go because his presence still worries the baby. The main character says goodbye and tells him to take care of himself. Noel asks the white-haired lady to explain everything to Rachel. After this, Ava invites the baby to return to the house. Lying down on a soft bed, she wonders what a difficult day it was today. Looking at her hand, she remembers the words of the captain and wonders if he wanted to know more about her strength. The girl doesn't know why, but she would prefer a walk in a snowstorm to these conflicting feelings. A red-eyed little girl climbs onto her bed and plops down next to her. The white-haired lady addresses the girl named Rachel, but she says that it is strange for her to hear her called by that name. The main character claims that the little girl will soon get used to it and asks if she was scared. The girl says that she was very scared because fire came out of her hand. Eve strokes Rachel, thinking that it will be difficult for her to explain everything, and she asks if the white-haired lady was scared too. The main character, of course, was scared. But first of all, she needs to reconcile the baby with her brother, so she asks the girl if she thought the captain was cool. Rachel is surprised by this question and asks again, then asks the white-haired lady to tell him what exactly is cool about him. The main character thinks that the girl also liked Noel. She says that he is tall and has broad shoulders. Eva has never seen anything like this. Rachel asks if she likes guys with broad shoulders. The benefactress says that's her type. Then the little girl asks what about the appearance. Ava says his face is incredibly attractive. The child says that Noel is the ideal of her little sister. The main character agrees with this fact, but wolves are avid enemies of dragons, so she tells the girl that this is not true. The girl looks a little downcast after these words, and he asks the half-breed if she wants Rachel to make friends with him, because if so, she will try. Eva jumps out of bed and asks if this is true. She has a lot of questions in her head, whether she was able to convince the girl, and whether she changed her mind. Rachel says that she can meet with her brother 3 times a week, but her benefactor must be with her because she is afraid to be alone with the captain. Eva hugs the girl and claims that she will do it without any problems, but once a week will be enough. Rachel claims that 3 times is better. The main character is worried and says that 3 times is quite a lot. But the little girl doesn't want to change her mind, so she agrees. While Noel is walking through the forest, his servants ask what about that girl. The captain looks at his hand and thinks that one light touch was enough to instantly calm the fire raging in him. He orders his charges to send more people there to guard the house, saying that they will continue to watch them. Xian comes into the room and asks what the girls are doing. Eve says they are discussing Rachel's brother. Brother, hearing this name, says that he hates this guy because he wanted to offend his sister. The main character insists that it was just a misunderstanding, and the captain apologized. Then Zion reminds the girl that she herself said not to judge a book by its cover, and told how there are many dangerous people in the world. He also resents Ruby being Ruby, and he doesn't want to call her anything else. Eve understands that the main obstacle will be Zion, not Rachel, and she thinks what to do now. The little girl decides to change the subject and reminds her benefactor that she promised to go play with them outside today. The main character says that she almost forgot, although Sion says that there are a lot of dangers there, so it's probably not worth it. But the boy does not agree with his sister and says that he can play near the house, because he also wants to go outside. The white-haired lady thinks that today she needs to be more affectionate with them and tells the children that she has things to do now, so let them go together, but let them not go too far from the house. The kids rejoice at this news and run out into the street with smiles on their faces. Brother offers to build a snowman. Eva tells them to dress warmly, otherwise they will catch a cold. When Rachel ties the scarf tighter to the white-haired boy, the main character says that they have a lot of delicious things to prepare for dinner, so they shouldn't be late. The guys are very happy about this news and agree. They quickly jump out into the street, and the white-haired lady follows and says that if they notice a stranger, then they should immediately run home. Eve thinks that, fortunately, Rachel has switched her attention for now, and notices that she has a lot of work to do, wondering where to start. Rachel leads the boy with white hair deeper into the forest. He says that their sister told them not to go far. The little girl is not very excited about this and says that she will show something that Zion will like. The child immediately begins to list that he likes stewed pork toys and hugs with his sister. Little Red Riding Hood says this is childish. She shows the boy with white hair fire from her hand, and he is delighted with it, saying that it is cool. Discriminated knows that her brother likes her fire magic. She remembers how one morning Sion noticed how the girl lit the fireplace using her abilities. He thought it was amazing and asked to see more. Rachel was surprised. The suit told the boy that she didn't do anything, but he claimed that he saw everything. Little Red Riding Hood said that he just dreamed it, but Zion said that his dream was magical and he would tell it to his sister. The little girl gave up and said that she would show him if he didn't tell his sister, but only once. Now the white-haired child warms his hands to Rachel's fire and says that it is very warm. Little Red Riding Hood, thinking that Tat kept his word and did not tell his sister about what happened, asks us if the guy is warm. He replies that, yes, and he notices that the light, although small, is warm. He likes it. The little girl puts out the fire, and the boy with white hair notices that it has become cold. Rachel asks if Zion thinks the weather in the north is too cold. The boy with white hair replies that he asked his sister many times to move to where it is warmer, but she refused, saying that it was not time yet. Rachel doesn't understand because the white-haired lady told her that she would like to move to a better place. Sion says he will tell the reason if the little girl makes fire. She does so, and notices that the guy is bargaining like his sister. After that, he says that sister said that she has a couple of options in mind for their future. It could be a place that no one knows about. Little Red Riding Hood thinks about what was said. Her fire begins to flare up. Zion continues his story and says that Eve said that she would try very hard to earn money for the castle. Rachel wonders if the white-haired lady's favorite things are a handsome man, a castle, a lot of money, and a place that no one knows. This means her older brother will be able to fulfill all her wishes. The fire girls are getting bigger and bigger, so he tells Xian that he knows how to fulfill all his sister's wishes. She says they should go after that handsome guy. But the boy with white hair doesn't like this idea because he is bad and offended his sister. Little Red Riding Hood claims that it was a misunderstanding, and he also apologized, adding that her brother is very cool and can fulfill all of Eve's wishes. And Noel can take the boy with white hair to warm places, Zion. He is very happy about this fact, and the Little Red Riding Hood tells him that he is smart, and he invites him to hide his ears. The boy with white hair excitedly says that it was an accident and asks the red-eyed little girl to pretend that she didn't see anything. The note just laughs at Zion and tells him that he forgot about the tale. The boy with white hair, in a panic, asks Ruby not to tell anything about his sister, otherwise he will be scolded. The little girl agrees, but on one condition: the white-haired child must not hate her older brother. They agreed, and Zion asks if he should call the girl Rachel. The little girl says he can call her Ruby. In the morning, Ava is sleeping peacefully in her crib, but then she hears someone knocking on the door. She gets tired from her bed and sleepily trudges to the door, not knowing who it was who came so early. Opening the door, she sees Noel. Then the sleepy girl remembers that the guy promised to come in today. After the main character has changed her clothes, she asks the captain to forgive her for her unkempt appearance, because she forgot about his arrival. He is not offended, and says that perhaps he came too early and interrupted the girl's sleep. The white-haired lady insists that he is not to blame. After that, they go to Rachel, who is still sleeping sweetly, because yesterday the children played until late, and now nothing can wake them up. Noel puts her hand on her sister's head and notices that she looks like she's having a lot of fun. The guy asks if Rachel is causing trouble. The new answer is that the little girl is a very sweet and obedient girl. The captain notices that his sister is listening to someone for the first time. I'm asking you if this is true because she is very charming and often expresses aegyo. Aegyo means a show of affection, often expressed through a sweet voice, facial expressions, and gestures. Rachel wakes up to find her brother and benefactress sitting across from her. The little girl says that the two of them look good, and then closes her eyes again. Eva, flushed, says that she probably hasn't woken up from sleep yet, and she claims that she often talks in her sleep. The main character in her thoughts asks the captain to say at least something, because silence makes the situation even more awkward. Noel asks if this is the first time. The white-haired lady doesn't understand what he means. Rachel's brother talks about their meeting because Eve seemed familiar to him. The main character cannot contain her laughter, so she turns away from the guy because she thinks about the old-fashioned way of getting closer to a girl. But the white-haired lady understands that this is not what he meant. Only half the wolf says that he won't say, but since birth she lived only in the north, so you think that they could hardly cross paths, and asks Noel if he could have misidentified himself. Suddenly, Rachel gets out of bed and talks about how slow her brother is. The main character is shocked by this, but Rachel wishes her little sister good morning with a sweet smile on her face. Looking at her brother, she is indignant that this guy has appeared again and claims that she felt very hot. She felt as if someone had touched her in a dream. The white-haired lady says that it was her brother and that his warmth may have been transferred to the girl. Eve wonders how a dragon can feel heat and thinks that the girl may have become accustomed to the magic of ice and the climate of the north. The main character notices that Noel and his sister are indifferent to each other, just like strangers. She decides that they need help and asks what they will do today. Eve gets an idea. She takes Rachel's hand and says that and take her brother's hand. This way, she can gradually get used to her brother's body temperature. But the little girl screams that this is wrong. She takes the hand of her brother and her benefactor. Putting them together, she says that everything is fine now. Eva is a little embarrassed and asks if she should also hold her brother's hand. She holds the guy's hand, but he doesn't look like he really wants to. The white-haired lady thinks that he doesn't like it, so she opens her hand and apologizes, saying that she will have to hold on to him too. But Noel argues that there is no need to apologize. It was the first time he felt such a strong cold, and it was even a little alarming. The main character asks the guy if he is okay, and notices that through their handshake, she feels warmth. She wonders if this is what he wanted to check that time. Suddenly, Xian comes into the room and asks what the couple is doing. Jumping on the bed, he claims that he also wants to do this, and asks to support his hand too. Eva is a little upset that their handshake was interrupted because she felt it was very warm. Rachel asks the boy with white hair why he came to them. And the main character tells her brother that he shouldn't behave like that in front of a guest and invites him to sit next to her. But Xian doesn't listen and claims that he wants to play the game too. Only half the wolf asks in his thoughts why the boy with white hair is so capricious today. She tells the child that Rachel is now communicating with her brother and he should not disturb them. Eve is afraid that Noel will notice Xian's ears and tail. The captain claims that there is nothing wrong with this and they played hot and cold. He invites the boy with white hair to join, extending his hand to him. Xian says he loves this and extends his hand in return. Touching Noel's hand, the boy with white hair cannot help himself because it is very warm. Eva, I like her brother's reaction because the captain is not even their relative. The child has a tail. The main character is very worried about this and thinks that the time has come. Their bad ending. Only the half-wolf quickly covers his brother's tail with his dress and explains that Rachel and Noel have not noticed his tail yet. But the girl doesn't know what to do because his ears will soon appear. The captain asks about the well-being of the white-haired lady. Eve says the room just got a little hot. Noel guiltily says it's his fault. The main character in her thoughts prays that he does not look down and thinks that she needs to somehow distract him. The white-haired girl says that it was just a slip of the tongue and she actually wanted to say that she was a little cold. The girl puts her hands on the captain's hands. She tells Noel that his hands are very warm and he is happy about this, saying that he is glad that Eva likes it. The main character is very angry with her brother. She tries in every possible way to distract Rachel's brother and says that his hands are like warm potatoes. In her thoughts, she asks someone to stop this shame. Rachel puts her hands on the head of the boy with white hair and tells her sister to look because Zion's hair is disheveled. She claims that the boy's hair sticks out like a puppy's ears. Sion realizes in horror that he just almost made a big mistake. He hides his tail. Eve sighs with relief, and you notice that you are still holding Noel's hand. She quickly pulls her hand away and apologizes, saying that she was just thinking. Zion is still excitedly touching his head, but Rachel shows him that everything is okay. Noel says that everything is fine because Zion is a friendly boy with white hair. The captain doesn't really know how to play with children, so he's worried. He puts his hand on the boy's head and says that he is obedient and not like Rachel. Noel says he likes Zion. The same one jumps on the captain and hugs him. The main character, in shock, asks Zion to come to her, but Rachel takes her hand, saying that she's hot. Eva hugs Little Red Riding Hood and thinks to herself that her brother will one day drive the girl crazy. She just hopes that he's okay again won't teach you anything. She tells Xian not to pester Noel, but the boy with white hair doesn't even listen and tells the captain that he is warm like the sun, warm and big. Rachel's brother is happy and says that this is the first time someone has given him such a compliment. For this, he thanks Zion, and the boy with white hair notices that he is also very handsome. The child tells his sister that this guy is her type. Noel is embarrassed by these words. Eva is also shocked by what was said, and in her thoughts asks her brother what he is talking about. She asks Sion if he is still awake and asks him to sit closer. The girl says that he is still sleepy and is talking nonsense. But the white-haired child, claiming that she constantly repeated that she loves handsome guys, especially when they cry. From such words, the half-breed's face turns red. Eve asks Zion what's going on with him today. The main character puts Rachel on the floor and begins to tear her brother away from Noel. But he doesn't want to let the captain go. Eva thinks that he's had enough, because few of them dared to reveal her secret in front of strangers. When Zion was a baby, every time he started crying, the girl would make fun of him and say that she liked the boy with white hair who cried. Who knew that karma would overtake her for this? In her thoughts, she asks the captain to pretend that he didn't hear anything. But he thinks about it and repeats loudly about beautiful crying guys. The main character is almost crying, thinking about all the bad words in the world. As evening falls, Noel leaves the estate and tells his sister that he will be back soon. Then he says goodbye to Eva, but for some reason she doesn't look very happy. Apparently her life has taken a toll today. The captain, with a smile on his face, wants to ask the half-breed for something. But when his gaze falls on Rachel, he says that he didn't want to say anything important. The guy insists that it's time for him to go, and the main character says goodbye to him. She was still curious about what he wanted to say. Walking through the forest, Noel begins to think that it is dangerous for him to get involved with strangers, because it can be risky. Because of his heart, he killed too many innocent people, including his parents. The guy can't control his frightening power. He can't understand one thing. How did Eve manage to curb her so easily? The guy doesn't know why, but he even took control of his inner fire. At the mere thought of the girl, anxiety begins to pulsate in his chest, burning his heart, and the smile never leaves his face. This question reminded Noel of a dream he had a few days ago. The captain did not understand where he was. His hand turned black. The guy saw a person walking towards him through the flames. Everything was in a fog, and I couldn't see my face. Noel understood that if the girl came closer, she would get hurt. He began to tell her not to come closer, but he was tongue-tied because he could barely breathe. He shouted to the stranger not to come close to him, but the girl did not listen, and touching the captain, put out all the fire. The pain that had tormented him so much disappeared. Noel asked the girl to tell her name. After this moment, the memories end. Walking through the forest, you think that the whole point is that Eva is his only salvation from a fatal illness, which is why thoughts about her make the unconscious guy smile. Love at first sight has nothing to do with children. It only belongs in romance novels. Noel hears some rustling. Turning around, he sees his sister. Rachel tells the guy how slow he is. She calls her brother stupid, a moron, and says that he has no more intelligence than a mindless, fire-breathing reptile. Noel looks at her sister in surprise. She regains her composure. Rachel states that it's a good thing that her brother hasn't ruined her plan yet. Since Eva is a chicken, Rachel can't take her to such a dangerous place. Noel asks her sister how she ended up here because it's not safe here. The girl says that it doesn't matter and claims that the white-haired lady likes guys who cry beautifully. She asks her brother if he got the hint, but when he tries to ask what the little girl means, Rachel shuts him up and says she hasn't finished yet, and he continues his story by saying that the most important thing is to be beautiful. Eva's ideal is a tall guy with broad shoulders and, if possible, money. She dreams of living in a palace. Little Red Riding Hood doesn't yet know which one, but the white-haired lady is a kind girl who clearly understands what she wants and tries to make it come true. The captain asks what's wrong with that. His sister is already furious and asks if Noel is a fool. She shouts that he completely fits the description and asks why he doubts. The little girl tells her brother not to convince himself that he doesn't like Eve. Noel, all red, says he has no feelings for the white-haired lady. Rachel screams that he is an idiot because how could he not notice his crush? Having calmed down, she says that she will help her brother. But he tells him not to forget that he is a guy, which means he must take the initiative in communicating with the one he likes. In the morning, Rachel wakes up in a warm crib. She notices that her sister is getting ready to go somewhere. The little girl runs up to her benefactress and asks if she is walking. Eve replies that she has some important things to do. Little Red Riding Hood asks if she will go to the market, and if her brother, that is, that guy, gave her money. Only the half-wolf replies that Noel gave a lot of money, but she needs to visit a friend, and she will be back soon, so Rachel doesn't have to worry and go get some sleep. The little girl says goodbye to the white-haired lady. But Little Red Riding Hood notices that her sister took a basket of herbs with her. Rachel thinks that her brother gave Eve a lot of money, but it's not enough for her. She talks about the girl's ambitions and approves of them, because this is the kind of girl who deserves to become her stepsister. But something worries Little Red Riding Hood, because I always cover my face when I go to sell herbs, so that no one recognizes her, and it turns out she actually went to a friend. The little girl is horrified and comes to the conclusion that this friend may actually be her boyfriend. Eva said that she needed money, but not in order to live happily ever after with her boyfriend. Rachel quickly distracts you from such thoughts by saying that she would not even consider such a possibility. A little girl decides that she needs to keep an eye on her sister, but suddenly Xian, who had just woken up, appears behind her. He asks where Ruby is going, and the girl answers that she needs to go out. Well, the little half-wolf asks where and says he will also go. Rachel doesn't really like this, because she wanted to follow her benefactor secretly and quickly return so that the boy with white hair would not notice anything, but he ruined all her plans. She tells Xian that this is a very boring place, but he asks where it is because he is curious. Little Red Riding Hood understands that if he doesn't take him with him, he will definitely follow him and may get lost on the way back. That's why she gives, and it's okay for the guy to go with her. but he asks Togo to promise that he will stay close. The children gather together and leave the house to find their sister. Eve, walking through the forest, remembers Rachel's words. She thinks that Noel gave her money and a lot of it. When the captain brought bags of gold coins to the white-haired lady, she asked how to understand this, but the guy remembered the words of Eva, who said that she needed a lot of money. The main character thought that the guy would despise her because of her strange preferences. Looking at the fur full of gold, she wondered how much money was there and why the captain looked so happy. He could give money away to his hobby. Only the half-wolf handed the bag of coins back to Noel and said that there were too many in there. But Noel began to object, saying that it seemed to him that, on the contrary, there was not enough there, and if more was needed, then let the girl say so. He asked not to worry about this. The main character wanted to ask how much he could add, but giving in to instincts in the presence of a stranger is a bad idea, and she decided that she had to refuse. But the captain replied that she should not hesitate to ask for more, because he could give her as much as she wanted. Eve took a handful of coins and handed them to Noel, and asked if she could exchange them for something more valuable, the captain's smile. He felt a little awkward and said the girl's name. This pushed her out of her thoughts, and she said, a little embarrassedly, that once she'd spent it all, she'd ask for more. The half-breed's instincts got the better of her again a couple of minutes ago. The main character thought what would happen if she asked for a fortune. She thinks that the captain is very naive, because as soon as you take his hand, his cheeks turn pink with embarrassment. Modest guys are her type. Ava tries to break away from these thoughts, because now that she has a lot of money, she can give out the last order and return to the children. She meets her buyer, who greets her and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. This is one of the white-haired lady's regular customers. He is a businessman who is always traveling for work, so he knows a lot, and sometimes tells the girl interesting stories. The blue-haired man asks if the main character brought what he asked for. Only half the wolf answers that she brought it. The buyer says that tigers in the East love healthy vegetables, so they like herbs. This is the most amazing thing that the girl heard from him. She says she brought more, and this may be her last day selling. The man asks why so suddenly, and if something happened, he also asks where he can now buy herbs for his tigers. Eva says that this is already his problem. The man says he thought they were close. The main character replies that it just seemed to him, and she asks if the businessman found out what she asked for. He asked if the girl was talking about how to contact intermediaries for illegal migration. After all, regarding this, the man asks if only half the wolf knows that they have a new ruler. Ava asks if he has anything to do with her question. The blue-haired buyer says that several intermediaries were arrested, and illegal migration was strictly prohibited, and it is better not to do this now. Ava was very upset by this news. The businessman began to reassure her because they still have plenty of time, and the girl needs to wait until the ban is lifted. But the main character doesn't have much time. The buyer says he wants to give the girl a going-away gift. Eve looks at him and asks what it is, but the man says that these are rare herbs that can hardly be found or bought anywhere. The main character asks if it's drugs. The businessman says it's something like that. Only the half-wolf furiously rushes at the man and says that she doesn't need that. The guy says that the girl is more honest than he thought and puts the gift in the basket, making sure that she will like the amazing taste of the new world. But the girl only claims that it will be a world of death when the cold hits and adds that she will throw away the gift on the way home. The businessman jokes that the freezing cold in the north will not lead to death, unlike heat stroke. But it's not very funny for the half-breed, because the threat of dying from the heat really hangs over her. Having said goodbye to her buyer, the girl goes home. She believed that she would be able to move to warmer places when she saved up money, but she did not expect things to turn out like this. On the way to the house, Ava thinks that she has no choice and will have to live in the north and take care of Rachel longer. She also needs to earn money to make good acquaintances. But the main character wonders what will happen to her if the dragons find out that she and her brother are wolves. She immediately drives away negative thoughts because there is always a way out. And they think about their children. Approaching closer to the house, she sees that the door is open. Having only gone halfway inside, the wolf does not see the guys. She realizes that the children are not at home and wonders what happened to them. Wandering through the forest, she looks for them, but the children are nowhere to be found. Then the main character will consider the possibility that they went to the square. Rachel is different from the locals in appearance. They will immediately pay attention to her and recognize her, so you need to find them as soon as possible. She asks the guys to wait for her. The girl is rushing around the market, but the children are not in the alley when they went together to sell herbs, or on the street along which they were walking. They are nowhere to be found. Eve, with tears in her eyes, wonders where Rachel and Zion went and reproaches herself for not keeping an eye on them. He runs as fast as he can and crashes into a person. Eve apologizes and looks up to see that it is Noel. He asks if something happened to the girl. She replies that the children disappeared, she left them at home and left, and when she returned, they were no longer there. The main character considers it her fault because she only cared about money. She is an irresponsible sister. She sobs and says it's all her fault. Noel tries to calm the girl down, and she understands that he rules now is not the time to cry. She says she will go and find the guys. Then he turns sharply and runs in search of the children. She mentally asks Xian and Ruby to take care of themselves until the girl finds them. At this time, a boy with white hair, looking at the market, asks Little Red Riding Hood if she is sure that they have come to the right place. Rachel says not really, but maybe. The boy with white hair doesn't really like the environment here and says that they shouldn't be there, and then he asks if it's time to go home. But Ruby takes his hand and says that they have come a long way to find their sister. To this, Zion replies that he is scared. The little girl tells the boy with white hair to stop whining, because she hates crybabies. But he claims that his sister loves them. Ruby says that they are Eve's taste, not hers. After Little Red Riding Hood says that Zion's sister has strange preferences, and he decided to support them, so he cries like a baby with white hair. A boy with white hair screams that his sister is not strange. The little girl says she didn't call her weird, although to be honest she's weird. But Xian asks what's wrong with her preferences. Ruby claims that no one in the world likes crybabies, to which you hear that at least a couple of people definitely do. To this, the girl replies that her older brother would never cry, and Zion tells her not to dare to despise his sister. Ruby says she didn't think so. The men standing nearby notice the children, and Little Red Riding Hood realizes that she acted thoughtlessly. Prat shakes his hand at Zion, inviting him to leave from there. But Zion turns around and begins to run away from the girl, saying that he will find his sister himself. The little girl shouts to the boy with white hair to stop, because if he continues to run, he will get to the central square, and then they will be noticed. She has no choice, and the girl uses the power of the flame to stop Zion. He still stops, and seeing the flame, says that he likes it. Ruby tells the boy with white hair that he is a fool because she never said she didn't love his sister. No matter who Eve likes, she will always be the most adored future stepsister. The little girl is happy that the problem is solved, as she thought the best way to make the naive wolf wag his tail is fire. A man stands behind the Little Red Riding Hood and repeats her last word. Ruby is surprised because a minute ago there was no one there. The stranger looks at the girl and asks if she can use fire. But she, pulling her hood over herself, says that he was mistaken. The wolf smiles, asking if the girl thinks she can hide her face under the scarf. Pointing to the flame burning near Zion, he claims that it was the little girl who created it. The boy with white hair is very scared and shaking. Ruby tells him to stand behind her. Judging by his lifeless look, this man is dangerous. Little Red Riding Hood tells the stranger that this does not concern him. She threatens the stranger with fire, telling him to stand where the fire is. But the man does not allow the girl to complete her sentence. He looks at the girl's hand and claims that he has seen such a ring somewhere. The guy remembers his meeting with the white-haired merchant and says that now it is clear to him why the girl refused him. He starts laughing like crazy. The children are scared by this. After just a moment, the stranger's face changes and asks how the dragon dared to go north. The man grabs Little Red Riding Hood by the clothes and lifts him into the air, asking how the dragon dared to talk to him in an arrogant tone. He says he can make good money by selling children. Xian starts punching the stranger and tells him to let Ruby go. But this annoys the man, and he pushes the boy with white hair. Xian falls to the floor, hitting her head. His ears appear. The stranger notices that the child is a half-breed and says jokingly that a dragon and only half-wolf make a great couple. Ruby thinks she has to protect Xian, but she can't breathe. Suddenly, a flame flares up on the man's back. He doesn't understand what's happening and lets the girl go. Noel angrily asks how this non-entity dared to touch his sister with his dirty hands. The captain approaches the children and asks if they are okay. At that time, the stranger who attacked the children shouts that he is going to die and asks for help. But Noel is not going to help him. He ponders what to do with this annoying wolf and talks about just finishing him off. Zion grabs the captain's hand and asks him to stop because the boy with white hair is scared. Noel asks Eve's brother for forgiveness. The peace and happiness in which he lived these few days almost blinded him. The guy almost forgot who he is. Wolves are his enemies who must be killed. But what if it scares the white-haired lady? Just the thought of it makes Noel's heart skip a beat. He puts out the fire on the stranger's back. He immediately begins to be indignant and asks the guy if he wanted to kill him and how he dares to attack a wolf on his own territory. The man claims that a war will start because of Noel. He claims that he will immediately follow the captain. But suddenly, a frozen apple flies into his head. This is Eve. She asks how this bastard could do this. The girl picks up the unconscious stranger from the ground and begins to shake him. She screams and asks how he dared to touch them with his dirty paws. She should have killed the guy right away when she realized that he was a drug addict. The main character picks up an ice cream apple from the ground and swings it to hit this bastard with it. But Noel doesn't let her do this. Only half the wolf asks why he stopped her. But in response, he hears that the girl is not herself. She tries to break free and screams for him to let her finish him off. Rachel, watching this, says that she no longer wants Eve to become her daughter-in-law. Zion asks why the girl decided this, but she replies that she would like such a wife herself. Noel puts his hands on the main character's cheeks and asks if she has calmed down. Only half the wolf begins to understand what she has done. The captain notices that she has regained her composure and apologizes for touching her without asking. He just wanted to help her calm down. Eva thanks him for his help. Sion runs to his sister and asks if she is okay. The white-haired lady grabs her brother by the shoulders and asks why he left home, and didn't she ask him to stay there while she was gone. The boy with white hair apologizes. The main character lived in fear that such happiness would be lost, so she tried to protect Zion from this. With tears in her eyes, she asks her brother what would happen if he got hurt. Only the half-wolf was very worried about him. The boy with white hair began to apologize and ask his little sister not to cry. Ava hugs her brother and says what a relief it is that nothing happened to him. Ruby calls the white-haired lady and says that it is her fault because the girl asked Xian to come with her. But the boy with white hair objects, saying that he insisted and asked Ruby to walk with him on the street and then ran away from her. Eva hugs the kids and says that they should blame her for leaving the kids alone. Rachel says it's not her fault that everything happened because she called her preferences in guys weird. Sion began to shout through tears that her preferences were not strange, but special. After this, Little Red Riding Hood apologizes and says that from now on she will respect Eva's tastes. And she says that she will ask her brother to cry more often. Only the half-wolf asks them if they have said everything. Then the captain asks for forgiveness for interrupting and says that the main character really has amazing preferences. Then Eva says that she's done crying and offers to go home. But he says that first he needs to thank Noel for saving him. Sion hugs the captain and thanks him because without him, they would have had problems. Rachel says thank you too and calls him brother. Noel is touched by this and offers his sister a hug. Little Red Riding Hood jumps into her brother's arms. Zion says he's hungry. I tells him that on the way, they will stop by to buy groceries and asks if Rachel and her brother want a certain dish. But they whisper, and Little Red Riding Hood's brother replies that she lost something in the alley. Eva says that then she needs to go back and asks what exactly the girl lost. But the note says that she will go with her brother because it's a secret. Noel tells the white-haired lady and Zion to move, and they will soon catch up with them. Only Half-Wolf, looking at them, thinks that it's good that they got along. Two dragons in an alley are approaching the very stranger who dared to offend the guys. He shouts that he almost died and asks what else they need from him. Rachel says that he got into trouble himself because Emo had no reason to scare her and Zion. Now it's time for him to pay for upsetting her future daughter-in-law. Ava puts the kids to bed. The captain comes into the room and asks if she is okay. The main character says that the guys have calmed down, but Noel says he didn't ask about them. He asked how Eve was doing. Only half the wolf does not understand what is happening. The man reaches out his hand to her face. He pushes her hair away from her face and says that the girl's eyes are red. She says she's fine, just really scared. The white-haired lady claims that what happened was her fault, but the captain insists that she does not need to reproach herself because she will take what happened into account for the future and it will not happen again. He tells Eve that she shouldn't blame herself for what the children did, and she did well and did everything to protect them. Noel tells the girl that if she doesn't mind, then they could do it together. But the main character does not allow him to finish his sentence, jumps off the bed and quickly leaves, saying that she needs to collect herbs. The young man is a little surprised by this, and the lady with silver hair goes outside and thinks that so much happened that day. He puts his hands to his chest and thinks that he couldn't even think that something like this would happen. Therefore, the girl decides that she cannot yet get it out of her head so easily, and she needs to bring herself to her senses before returning home. The next day, the young lady is already sneezing. A little girl with red eyes asks if her benefactor is unwell and offers her a blanket. The main character says that she feels somehow painful. The girl cannot believe that a short walk at night led to a cold. She covers herself with a blanket and thinks that she has lived for so long north, but managed to just get sick. But even the baby with white hair, Zion, did not catch a cold. The boy with white hair tells his sister not to die, and the girl says everything is fine. Approaches Eve, a young man with black hair, asks to forgive him. He claims that the young lady has a high fever and needs to take medicine, after which the guy points to the grass and says that they are good for the common cold, so he will cook their girlfriend. The main character thanks him and apologizes for something that again causes inconvenience. But the young man tells her not to worry and claims that he will be back soon. Sion offers his help, and the girl with black hair says that he cannot use fire, so let him leave it to her. The main character watches all this from her bed. The guy at this time asks which herbs to take, but the young lady slowly falls asleep. A short time later, someone awakens her from her sleep. It turns out to be a guy with black hair. He brings a mug and says that this is medicine, so the girl should just take it and rest. The young lady rises heavily from the bed and says that her head is pounding. The guy brings her a glass and says that he made a decoction of herbs, so let Eva drink it, because it will make eating easier. The main character does so, but notices that this tea has a slightly bitter taste. A young man with black hair puts her to bed and offers her to sleep. He also says that he will leave the rest of the broth on the table. So when the young lady wakes up, let her drink more. Then he says that he will go outside with the children, and they will get water and then return soon. The wife's girlfriend understands whether this is due to weakness. But when the guy's hands touch her, they make her feel as if she's hanging between heaven and hell. The young lady thinks how warm she is. After all, through the touch of this young man, his love and desire to care are felt, so she fell asleep immediately and had no idea what was happening around. But when she opened her eyes, her body felt a little strange. The girl thought about whether they had found water, but suddenly she noticed that her hand looked a little strange, and a tail appeared. Therefore, the main character comes to the realization that she has turned into a she-wolf. The young lady cannot believe it, because she slept for so many hours as if she were not alive, but woke up in the form of an animal. The main character hopes that this must be a dream, and that she is still sleeping, and that what is happening is part of her fantasy. Eve decides to just calm down, close her eyes, and count to 10, because maybe then everything will go back to normal. The young lady begins the countdown, but after a few numbers, she falls into despair and realizes that this is still not a dream, and she is simply trying to deny reality. Eva doesn't understand what's happening, but then he smells a slightly familiar smell, and when he looks at the table, he sees a cup of blue infusion there. Now the young lady realizes that even though her nose is blocked due to a cold, she still smells a disgusting smell. And the girl remembers how she asked the young man to make a decoction of herbs in a basket. Well, those herbs have no side effects, and the guy apparently added something else. Then the main character climbs onto the table and sees those same blue herbs. The young lady remembers who gave them to her. She thinks why the guy gave them away. He kept them for himself. She thinks that then it is not surprising that she turned, although in the story itself this never happened. So the girl thinks what she should do to return to human form. After all, if she doesn't cope before this family arrives, then things will be bad. The young lady is already imagining how they will burn her alive and thinks that she is screwed. But the girl decides to remain calm and understands that, firstly, she needs to get out of there. So the she-wolf heads towards the door and tries to push the door away. She thinks that she will return to her human form once the effects of the drug wear off. But no matter how hard the main character tries, she still cannot open the door because she has paws instead of hands. But then the door suddenly bursts open, and the young lady thinks she's finally got it. But Rachel just comes into the room. She tells Zion that Eve is most likely sleeping, and when someone is sick, It is important to give them the opportunity to rest properly. The main character understands that she is finished, and when Rachel looks at her, then the young lady thinks that, judging by the expression on her face, the girl understands who she is. She also sees her brother, but the boy with white hair only says that it's magical, and the main character understands that he doesn't seem to have guessed. Since his birth, they lived deep in the forest, so the guy never saw other wolves, and Eve did not show what they were like. But then, the boy with white hair says that the ears and tail look familiar. The young lady prays not to be recognized. That boy with white hair says that the wolf looks like him, but Rachel quickly shuts him up and says that the creature is like a dog. The girl claims that she saw it once, and it was definitely a dog. The boy with white hair only asks where the lady with black hair saw her and if her memory has returned. The main character only thinks why Zion suddenly became wiser today. The boy with white hair says that he needs to show the dog to his sister, but when they look at the bed, the sister is not visible there. Therefore, the young man begins to think. He says that the sister disappeared, but the dog appeared. The main character in her thoughts asks him not to think anything up, because now is not the time for thinking. The girl understands that her brother turns on his brain only when it is not required, and the boy with white hair adds that his sister is somehow connected with the dog. But the she-wolf immediately falls to the ground and begins to roll on the floor to be petted. She understands that she needs to divert attention, and this method works because the guy immediately runs up to the she-wolf and starts petting her. Rachel is a little shocked, but she still sighs and says that it is definitely a dog. The main character thinks that it hurts her to hear people call her that. The girl says that sister must have left and she has a fever, so Eva probably wanted to cool down. The guy just shows the wolf's paws and says that they look like marshmallows. Eva thinks that he should feel sorry and sympathize with his sister, who is forced to pretend to be a dog and play with her. The lady with black hair adds that it doesn't matter and calls the young man a fool. She asks what will happen if suddenly her brother returns. The main character is a little scared because of this. The wolf understands that because of them, she almost forgot about her hopeless situation, because the final boss is about to appear. And then the same final boss enters the room. Everyone except Sion looks at him in shock. The guy asks why this creature is there. The main character can't think of anything better than to just bark, and she herself understands that she's screwed. The she-wolf thinks whether she should act nice, but immediately realizes that this trick will not work on him, because this young man is not as easy to fool as children. Therefore, the creature with white fur closes its eyes and thinks about what to do. But suddenly Rachel grabs her and says that it's just a dog. The guy asks what she's talking about. The little girl says that she will raise this dog, so let her brother not offend her, because she knows a lot of cute movements. The young lady says that if he wants her to live with him, then he should be attentive to the dog, because she is not at all easy. A young man with black hair turns to Rachel, and he himself thinks why she behaves this way because this is the first time. But then this whole situation seems strange to him. He thinks where Eve went, and then looks at the table and sees herbs scattered there. The bed was also dismantled, as if the girl jumped up and ran away in a hurry, and also this dog suddenly appeared. Therefore, the guy suddenly realizes that perhaps this dog is Eva. The main character understands that Noel is in a bad mood. If nothing is done, he will explode with rage. The she-wolf already imagines this whole picture and thinks whether it is possible to scare children with fire. So she decides to get out of Rachel's arms and realizes that she must prevent disaster at all costs. Therefore, she comes closer to the young man. He looks a little gloomy, but the main character does not stop. She puts her paw on his shoe and in her thoughts asks him to forgive her this time, and also asks, isn't she cute? But the guy hardly reacts to this, so the she-wolf thinks that obviously this won't work and she will have to accept death. And the worst thing is that she will plunge into eternal sleep in the guise of a dog, or rather a she-wolf. But Noel only says that she is charming. The young lady doesn't understand what he's talking about, but the guy just bends down and says that he understands Rachel. He claims that the eye color and coat are the finest he has ever seen. The young man smiles, and the main character realizes that his mood has changed dramatically and wonders if she succeeded. The guy just pets the wolf and says that she is a special dog. The young lady is not happy about this, but she thinks that if the guy honors her, then she won't mind being nice. The young man just smiles and thinks that she doesn't need to try so hard to pretend. But then he gets up and says that he will go collect firewood. Rachel asks what about the puppy. Noel tells the girl to take care of him because the dog is clearly confused. The young lady just hugs this creature tighter and then asks when her brother will return. The guy claims that he can't manage it quickly and will still have to walk. He states that it seems Eva has gone for a walk, so Noel tells the kids to look after the house until he comes. And then he leaves, closing the door behind him. But as soon as he does this, he immediately sits on the threshold. The guy realizes that he could barely restrain himself from attacking her and thinks that for a century he didn't even know that the girl was a wolf. If Rachel had not stopped him, he would have destroyed the she-wolf at that very moment. The young man thinks what he should do now. After all, this rage and unconscious strength clouds his mind and drives him crazy. Rachel sighs at this time. She picks up the dog and offers to go get ready for bed. Zion asks why there is such a hurry because he wants to play with the puppy, but the young lady says that the dog needs to sleep too. The boy with white hair is a little disappointed, and Rachel understands that this will give her sister time to return to her real appearance in a calm environment. After which, she calms down the she-wolf and says that it's time to watch dreams. The main character is very grateful to the baby. Eve licks her and thinks that if the girl had not stopped Noel, she would not have survived. The young lady thanks the baby in her thoughts, but the she-wolf still doesn't understand what she should do to return to human form because she cooled Noel's ardor. But if she can't return to her previous form, then it will be very bad. The girl understands that it's all because of the drugs and her eyes close on their own. The young lady thinks that maybe she shouldn't put pressure on herself and give herself some time to heal. When the kids fall asleep, she turns back, and her last thought before going to bed was what a difficult day it was. A little time later, Noel comes into the room. He sees this sleeping trinity and thinks that Eve has become human again. The guy opens it and thinks that the young lady must have been very panicked when she saw that she had turned into a wolf. Although very cute, he sits on a chair near the bed and thinks how, and the girl will react when she learns that he is aware. Noel wonders if she will run for her life. The guy understands that at first he used Rachel to get to know the girl better, as an excuse to establish contact with her, but he understands that if this lady were the wolf from the legend, he would have to take her heart to save his life. But since he was in love with her and decided to stay by her side forever, all the emotions that were hidden deep in his heart began to appear. The guy understands that he does not want to harm Eve and wants to be with her forever. But for this, you need to do something so that Eva chooses him. Suddenly the girl says in her sleep how cold she is. The guy puts his hand on her face and thinks that first he must become the one she likes. He thinks that if he himself could control his powers, he would use them to warm the girl. The main character almost wakes up from the touch, and the guy pulls his hand away. But the young lady only says that she is warm. And then he grabs the young man's hand, and through his sleep pulls him closer, after which he is already hanging over her. The young man understands that his only heart beats for her. He is embarrassed and realizes that it either floats like the moon in the sky or flies down to the ground. At this awkward moment, he turned to God in whom he had never believed. The guy asks him that Eva's choice falls on him, and the girl falls in love with him as much as he loves her. In the morning, the main character wakes up and thinks that the weather is warmer that day, but then she remembers that she is in the north and there is no warm weather there, so the girl immediately jumps out of bed. But on her feet, she sees Noel, who is also holding her hand. The young lady is a little embarrassed and wonders why the young man with black hair is holding her hand in her sleep. And did he really spend the whole night like that, fearing that she would catch a cold again? Then the main character gets a little scared. After all, she's thinking about whether he saw her ears and tail. The girl is already imagining the worst options. She thinks that suddenly the young man will tie her up and interrogate her. When he wakes up, the young lady does not understand what to do and whether she should run away, but then Noel wakes up. Ava just wishes him good morning. Well, then the guy grabs her hand harder and asks if it's still cold. The main character asks a little embarrassedly what he's talking about, and the guy only has a sincere smile on his face. He says that Eva went for a walk last night, so her temperature dropped. The young lady only thinks that he is saying that. And then she remembers that Noel thinks that yesterday she went for a walk and then screams that he is right. The girl claims that she walked for so long that she almost froze, and then they cry out whether she held his hand all night. The young lady lets go of his hand and apologizes for causing trouble. The guy just thinks how cute she is, and a little later he's already going about his business. The main character asks if Rachel's memory has returned and if she will go home with her brother. But the little girl with a sad expression on her face says that she doesn't remember anything. Then the main character pats her on the head and says that then she will have to stay with them. Then the young lady turns to Noel and apologizes again for holding his hand for so long. The guy says that it's okay, and Eva adds that he probably didn't sleep well because of this. And he says that if he suddenly needs help, he can say, The girl claims that she will do anything. The guy asks if this is true, and the young lady replies that she will try to do everything in her power. Then the young man bends down a little and says that if she doesn't mind, she could stroke his hair. Rachel is shocked that her brother took action. She wonders why Noel is so assertive today. The girl doesn't know what he's up to, but decides to help. With a smile on her face, she says that Zion is calling her, so she'll probably go. The main character thinks how awkward it is to be alone with this young man. But the guy only turns to Eva and says that all the time he was holding her hand, he became a little colder. The young lady thinks she's been blown away and asks if they should hold hands then. The guy claims that this is a good idea, but if she touches his hair, it will be much better. He also asks with a sad expression on his face whether it would be unpleasant for a girl to pet him. Eva blushes at this. She thinks what an attractive expression the guy has. The young man says that he understands how much he is asking, but he simply cannot forget that cool moment when they were together. The main character just screams and tells him to stop doing strange things because they were just holding hands, and children might misunderstand them if they hear them. But the young lady agrees and still puts her hand on his head. This makes the guy blush a little, and Eva's heart begins to beat faster. The girl understands that the she-wolf is now stroking the captain of the dragons, while her heart beats faster. The young lady thinks she probably looks stupid. A few days later, she turns to the children and tells them not to remove their capes while they are in the square. The kids agree, and then they head to the market. The main character chooses what to buy. It seems to the girl that something happened to the children at home in her absence, so she decided to take them for a walk on the condition that they would not leave her side. Suddenly, Xian turns to his sister. He points to one of the shops and suggests they go there together. The main character asks if he wants to go to the bookstore, and she herself is wondering whether she should buy a couple of books about the human world because she has wanted this for a long time. The girl agrees, but tells the guys to be quiet, after which they go into a bookstore. The young lady understands that the children are delighted. Their legs also need to be watched so that they do not take off the capes. Suddenly, the girl sees one book. She realizes that it is a romance novel for adults. The girl remembers that before her birth, she also read a novel, and the main character loved to shed tears in front of his beloved. The young lady is wondering whether she should buy it, because she now has a lot of free time and money. The main character smiles and thinks that she is already an adult, so she can afford it. But suddenly, her gaze falls on an empty shelf, and the main character realizes that there are no books about the human world there. So she approaches the seller and says that she doesn't see books about the human world anywhere, and then asks if they are all sold. But the man only asks if she knew that they were banned a long time ago. The young lady is shocked by this news, and the seller continues and says that this is all due to massive and illegal migration to the human world. Their king was very angry, so these books were withdrawn from sale until the situation got worse. The man says that nothing can be done, and the main character understands that, in the end, she bought a book that did not interest her that much, and if they are stuck in the north for the rest of their lives, then what should she do? Rachel looks at her sister and then goes into her room in the evening. The girl uses her firepower and thinks that she definitely heard what Eve said about the human world. The little girl wonders if the girl wants to move there, but if this happens, they will never be able to see each other again. The little girl creates a bird using her powers and understands that Eve must be stopped at any cost. The little girl tells the bird that she has a request, after which she points to the book that her sister bought in the morning. The girl understands that since the young lady didn't tell anyone about her, it means this book is somehow connected with her plans to move, and the little girl needs to know what she's thinking about. But when she opens this book, she realizes that it is a romance novel for adults. Suddenly, as she turns one of the pages, she comes across something that confuses her, after which Rachel flips through some more pages. And then he hands the book to the phoenix and tells him to fill out this passage and then give it to his brother. The girl also claims that this must be done now. The bird immediately obeys her and flies away. Then she flies into her brother's estate and tells him about all this. The guy only shakes a little from such news. He embarrassedly asks if Ava really has such preferences. A short time later, he is already sitting with a book. The young man understood that since he intended to please Eve, he had to make every effort to become an attractive crybaby. That's why Noel read 10 stories that will bring you to tears. The guy screams, what else can he do to burst into tears? He understands that there is no point in reading a bunch of sad stories. But then his gaze falls on the bird in the window. The young man realizes that this is Rachel's phoenix, so he allows him to fly inside. The bird then reveals a message from its owner. Rachel said that the guy should immediately find out what type Ava is. And after the bird shows him what Rachel asked for, the guy is shocked. He now understands who Eve likes. Noel understands that he has nothing in common with the ideal girl, but thinks that now is not the time to learn to cry. It's better to go and check with Eva herself. One of the servants asks his master to wait, because it is night outside. But the main character only claims that he is going north. The servant asks if he is doing this again, believe the master only recently returned from there. The guy screams that the young man with black hair cannot go because he himself knows that he has an important meeting tomorrow, but the young man only claims that he will return soon and then turns into a dragon and flies away. The servant screams in shock that something like this has appeared in the north since his master flies there almost every day. At this time, Rachel and Zion are playing outside. They invite their sister to play together. The girl refuses and says not to think about her, but just enjoy the game. The young lady understands that she should have taken them outside for a walk earlier, because the guys are having a lot of fun. The main character sighs and thinks that she is even envious, although she also had a good time reading a novel last night. I completely forgot about time. Eve understood that this was the first time she had read such a novel since her rebirth. But at some point, the young lady came into a stupor. She read a line in which I said that he had been tormented all night by a fire raging in his chest, so the guy came all this way to come to the young lady. The main character, with shaking hands, reads that the young man had bronze skin and an attractive appearance. Then Eva thinks, what the hell, this is completely not her taste. The girl hasn't read romantic stories about a prisoner for a long time, so it's her own fault for not checking the contents in advance. The young lady thinks that it's not that she doesn't like healthy guys, but she will prefer the one who is better able to evoke compassion in her, and if he is also handsome, she will receive 100 extra points. A girl likes guys with thin, long fingers, but in moderation, her ideal should be with dark hair and light skin color, and also with a gentle smile. If the young lady could choose, it would be someone like Noel, but the girl is embarrassed and thinks what's wrong with her, and then decides to leave such thoughts. But suddenly, a noise is heard from behind, and the main character wonders what happened. And when he turns around, he sees Noel. Then the girl asks if they have an appointment for today. The young man replies that no, and then thinks that if his memory serves him correctly, then Zion said that Eve likes crybaby handsome men. However, Rachel yesterday showed a completely opposite image of this guy wondering who she really likes. But he thinks it's worth a try, and then quotes one of the lines from this novel. Noel claims that all night he was tormented by a fire raging in his chest, so he came all this way to come to the young lady. The main character, all confused, asks what he is talking about, and she herself thinks what happened to him. But then she remembers that these words of his exactly repeat Hyena's remark. And the lady with white hair wonders if this could be a coincidence, or maybe the guy had a fever. The young man approaches Eve and asks her to cool him down. The main character understands that the relationship is unlikely to work out because she is a wolf. Sion holds out the rope from San and says that now it's Ruby's turn, but the girl just looks at the two. A boy with white hair asks if Ruby can even hear him. The lady with black hair screams in a whisper that she has shown how to behave in order to win a heart and ask what her brother is doing. After that, she screams louder that since it doesn't work, he should at least make his skin darker like that guy's. She screams that she gave him the perfect tip, but the guy still made a mistake, and this is a complete disappointment. And in her thoughts, the girl adds that if her brother cannot cope, then Eva will become her wife. Zion just whines and says that Rachel isn't listening to him. He then turns around and says he doesn't want to play with her anymore and then leaves. The young man understands that sometimes a girl says something that he cannot understand. Of course he wants to play with Rachel, and the girl played with him before, but now he almost cries realizing that the young lady is not even paying attention to him. But then he drives away such thoughts from himself and thinks that he can entertain himself. He goes a little further and says that he doesn't care about Rachel anymore, and then don't even let her ask to play together. But then under his feet, he sees a glass container with a crystal. The young man immediately bends down to her and thinks how beautiful this jar is, and hides behind a tree at his acquaintance. At this time, Noel is still asking Eve to cool him down, but the girl only covers his collar and thinks that he can't. The main character says that no matter how comfortable he is now, but you can't trust someone to unbutton a shirt like that. The young man just sighs. He understands that the hyena's style doesn't suit him at all, so Eve won't like him. But then the girl puts her hand to his face and says that last time he said that he felt much better when she stroked him. Noel understands that last time he was so jealous of the children that he said it without thinking, but the guy understands that the young lady still remembers. The main character asks if it's better for him this way, and the guy thinks that in order to win the heart of such a tender girl, he must try his best and find out more about her ideal type. The young man says that he really likes these touches, but thinking that this is terribly awkward, a short time later, the young lady removes her hand and asks if Noel is okay now. The young man says yes with a smile and thanks her. The main character reaches for his shirt. She says that the guy missed one button and offers his help. The girl asks why he suddenly decided to unbutton his buttons, and his face is all red. The guy gets even more embarrassed and says that the weather is just too hot, so he couldn't stand it. The young man wonders if it was rude, and then covers his face with his hand and apologizes. He claims that next time he will be more attentive, and if Eva doesn't like it when they blush with shame, then he gets caught hiding it. The main character doesn't even understand what to do, because she met her ideal for the first time, but he is a dragon. At this time, Sion picks up the bottle from the floor. He realizes that this stone is very beautiful and similar to Ruby's eyes, and it is also warm. Therefore, the boy with white hair decides that this stone can be taken home, but suddenly, someone approaches the young man and greets him. The boy with white hair asks who this man is, and the guy with green hair answers that he is not a bad person. Zion thinks that he has a strange smile. He remembers that Sister once said that one must be careful with those whose eyes are too narrow. Therefore, the young man says that Sister told him not to communicate with strangers. The guy with green hair thinks that of course this brat will be difficult to fool, but fooling vigilant kids is his strong point. So the guy takes off his hood, and the boy with white hair is surprised by this. After all, this young man's hair changes its color to white. Xian admires this and says that the man's hair color has changed. The stranger asks if this is great and says that this is his ability because he is a chameleon. A boy with white hair asks in shock what it is. The man changes the color of his hands and says that they can change their color at any time. Then he thinks that the boy with white hair is already defeated. And now we can get down to business. The stranger asks what the young man is holding in his hand. Sion says he picked it up by accident, and this bottle looks warm. The stranger asks if this is true, and if the boy with white hair will then give it to his sister. Zion remembers her sister and sadly looks at the pebble. The man thinks that soon the boy with white hair will completely submit to him. He claims that he knows a place full of such things, but the baby with white hair just begins to cry. The stranger screams in shock. Why is he crying? He definitely didn't expect this, and the kid with white hair claims that his sister really likes Ruby. The man asks who it is, and the baby with white hair says that Sister said that Ruby is so warm that you can cuddle with her every day. While he's just a cold little boy with white hair. The guy thinks if he has this thing, will his sister hug him? He says with tears in his eyes that his sister doesn't love him anymore, and that cannot be changed by any stone. The guy with green hair, in shock, asks Togo not to be sad. He himself even shed tears from this, because he cannot look at other people's tears. The stranger, with tears in his eyes, cries out that there is no need to think only about the bad, because Sister, the boy with white hair, cannot help but love him. The kid with white hair also screams in tears that his sister likes Ruby more. The man says that Sister, the boy with white hair, loves him very much, and the baby with white hair will understand when he grows up, but Zion just asks what he should do now. Then the stranger tells him to remember that if you love someone, then just demonstrate it to him so that one day you won't regret it. After all this, the main character's brother blows his nose into a handkerchief, and the stranger tells him not to hate his sister. After all, she may not show it, but deep down she loves the boy with white hair very much. Sion says he understands. He also thanks the stranger and claims that he is much better now. The guy with green hair says it's nice. And then he claims that the pebble is warm, and he is sure that his sister will be incredibly happy when the boy with white hair gives it to her, and then all his worries will disappear at once. Although this may hurt the baby a little. The guy with green hair understands that it's time to get back to work and finish the task, because if the boy with white hair takes the bait, then it will be easier for him to get closer to both the girl, which is his goal. Colleagues ask Chameleon to take care of this, but suddenly he hears someone else's voice. It turns out to be Rachel. The girl asks why this man is there, and then he asks Zion why he left without saying anything, because of him, the young lady could not watch her sister and brother. The girl understood that the atmosphere between them was getting better, and it seemed that her sister had fallen in love with the shyness of the young man. Therefore, the young lady told Zion that his sister's ideal type was not a hyena. But when she turned around, the boy with white hair was no longer there. The girl was almost screaming with rage. She said that even if the boy with white hair didn't help in any way, How could he leave silently? Now Rachel screams that it turns out that while she was running and looking for Zion, he was just having fun with someone he was seeing for the first time. The white-haired boy says it's not like that, but the young lady only advises the stranger to come up with a good explanation before approaching her. Then the boy with white hair immediately goes to Rachel, and the guy with green hair thinks what a traitor he is. Then the young lady asks Zion who this man is, and then looks at the stranger and tells him to tell him everything he knows. The guy thinks that, until he went there, everyone was sitting on pins and needles, because now not only is the young lady missing, but the captain has not returned from the north. One of the servants claimed that he had the feeling that their master was secretly raising a pet there. His colleagues asked what he was talking about and whether he was confident in his words. The young man says that, of course, he would never assert anything without evidence, but he not only visits there often, but also buys mountains of romance novels. The guy with green hair wasn't even listening to what was being said, but then someone shouted his name and told him to go north. The young man with green hair just asks who is knocking there. He is sleeping, but he immediately gets hit on the head with a scroll. His colleague screams that he told him not to sleep during the meeting. He says that the next time the captain goes north, let the guy with green hair secretly follow him. The guy asks why he should do this, but his colleague only hands over a jar with a precious stone and tells Chameleon to try to get along with a person who is close to the captain and use this stone. After all, this stone, purified by the captain's inner strength, can be very dangerous for an ordinary person, but they are able to withstand more than an ordinary person. He also adds that more power has been added to this stone to increase the detrimental effect, and Green Hair Guy must remember that he should never allow young Mistress Rachel to touch this stone, as its fire attribute is similar to her flame. If the woman the captain met is worthy of becoming his life partner, then, having touched the stone, she will absorb all its power into her body. But the guy with green hair asks what if a simple person touches him. His colleague replies that obviously then she will not be able to cope with him and will burn to the ground. Now the guy with white hair thinks that this will make the girl very angry, but he just apologizes. And then she says that there was no other choice since she and the captain had been away for a long time. Rachel realizes that these scumbags are using her brother's power to test Eve. Her sister has been very kind to her, and the girl doesn't want to put her at risk. So the young lady turns to Zion, and he says to give her the stone, because it is a very dangerous thing, and it's better to let it stay with her. A boy with white hair hands the stone into her hands, and Carmel is already clutching her head. He understands that the young lady cannot touch the stone, and if the attribute of fire collides with her flame, then the young lady will be in danger, so he immediately snatches the stone from her hands. The girl asks what he is doing and orders him to return this thing. The guy with green hair thinks suddenly the young lady will take him away. The girl just screams for him to give it back quickly, and the stranger thinks that if everything continues like this, then sooner or later she will have him, and the only solution is to swallow him. Therefore, the guy thinks that he can handle it and immediately throws the stone in his mouth. Rachel screams that he's an idiot and should spit it out, but the green hair guy just moves back. Rachel once again tells him to spit it out, but he does not agree because it will be more dangerous if he ends up with a girl. Then the little girl uses her firepower and says that if it doesn't spit it out, then she will have to resort to force. But then the stranger swallows this stone and sighs. Rachel wonders if he was going crazy. After all, since the guy swallowed it, it's very bad. Black energy begins to come out of the chameleon's mouth. He turns to the young lady and asks to help him. Rachel just takes a step back. She thinks how creepy this is, and since the stranger swallowed the stone with the strength of her brother, he will soon die. The fear that the young lady had forgotten flares up again in her. This nightmare reminds her of the old days in the north. The little girl understands that she is very scared, and she doesn't want it to end like this. But suddenly, someone puts his hand on hers. It turns out to be Zion. The boy with white hair tells Rachel not to be afraid. After all, he will protect her. The young lady understands that the baby with white hair is trembling with fear, but still tries to protect her. Therefore, the girl tries to calm down, and understands that if she gives in to fear, then Zion will also be in danger. So she tells the boy with white hair to stand behind her and uses the power of fire. She tells Carmel that it will hurt. But suddenly, someone flies past the two and straight into the chameleon's head. Carmel comes to her senses and thinks what it was, but when she looks at her feet, there is a frozen stone. The girl says that someone is trying to destroy their peaceful life, and for this, he even traveled such a long way deep into the forest. Eva screams that the stranger should not dare touch her children and asks how he dares to do this. "And who do you think you are?" Noel also comes up behind him. He's a little worried about Eve. The girl just screams that she will show the stranger who he ran into. Rachel hugs her sister lovingly and says it's dangerous. But then the main character realizes that the body is unusually hot, and when the guy grabs her hand, then a little dark energy passes over to her. Noel runs up to the lady with white hair. He asks if Eva is okay. The girl says that, and only the clothes were a little scorched. The young man with black hair asks what the hell Carmel is doing there, and then he claims that, judging by his condition, he ate a red stone. Rachel says she thought they were in danger, so she used her powers. And Noel asks why he is there, and the main character asks if the young man with black hair knows him. The guy claims that it must have been a stone with its power, because looking at the state of the chameleon, it is clear that there was a lot of it there. And if nothing is done, Carmel's life will be in danger. But Noel clenches his fists and does not understand what he can do. At this time, the main character runs up to that guy and begins to use her power on him. A young man with black hair screams that this is dangerous, but the young lady claims that she cannot let him die. Her magic will take the heat out of him, so it's worth a try. The girl tries her best to do this, and Noel wonders how this is possible. A short time later, Carmel already wakes up in bed. He turns around or does not understand where he is. The guy wonders if he died, but suddenly someone comes into the room and says that the stranger has finally woken up. It turns out that this is the main character. She asks if everything is okay. The guy is a little shocked by this, and the young lady comes up to him and puts her hand on his forehead, then claims that there is no fever. The guy is a little embarrassed and wonders if this is an angel. Eva hands him the medicine and offers him a drink, as it will dissipate the remaining heat. The guy with green hair thanks her, and then he concludes that he is in heaven, because there are no bosses or work problems. But then he hears another voice that tells Eve that he brought that plant. Carmel wonders if this angel's name is Eve, but then he sees his boss there and is surprised. The young man asks if Eve talked about this plant. The main character is surprised and says that it is the best, and she will go and make a decoction. Carmel, in her thoughts, asks the angel not to leave, but the girl leaves the room and his boss approaches the chameleon. Noel says she now wants to hear his excuses. The guy with green hair immediately kneels down and asks for forgiveness, because they only wanted to bring the captain back. The guy claims that he won't blame him for this and understands perfectly well that the guy with green hair was worried about him, and that's why he did what he did. He puts his hand on his shoulder and says that's the main problem, that Eva and the children were almost harmed. Carmel immediately hits his forehead on the floor and screams that he is sorry, and he is ready to atone for his sin with his life. But then the main character comes into the room and asks why. Noel understands that he needs to show his good side. He can't let what happened ruin everything, and even if he's not her ideal crew, he's at least worth hiding his shortcomings. Therefore, the young man puts his hand to the chameleon's head and screams that his temperature is rising again, so it's better for him to lie back down. Carmel is shocked and does not understand what happened until his young man with black hair picks him up and says that he will bring a bag of ice. A little time later, the guy with green hair is already sitting with a mug of medicine and a bag of ice. He does not understand what happened to his boss. After all, the young man with black hair seems to be pretending, but Carmel remembers that this girl saved him. However, ice magic is an ability of wolves, and so he asks if the girl used magic to reduce the fever back then. The main character replies that everything was so. Carmel then asks if the young lady is a wolf. The main character wonders why this happens every time she meets someone from the south. The young lady just smiles awkwardly and tries to justify herself, but suddenly someone comes into the room and calls her brother. It turns out to be Zion. The boy with white hair asks if the guy with green hair is okay, because he was very surprised when the guy fell. Carmel claims he is fine, and the young lady thinks that her little brother arrived in time. Rachel smiles from behind at this time. The girl turns to her sister and asks to hug her, because she is hot. Eve holds out her hands and asks if this is true. Noel smiles at this, and Rachel thinks that since her brother can't cope on his own, she'll help, and that's enough of this nonsense. The main character asks if Rachel is better. The little girl replies that everything is fine, and she calls her brother over to her. She claims that her brother is also hot and offers to hug everyone together. Eva is a little embarrassed and asks if the little girl likes to hug. The young lady replies yes. Carmel just watches them, and then asks the boy with white hair what their relationship is. The main character says that they were brought together by circumstances, and there is no relationship. Rachel just hugs the girl and says that she is her sister, and she looks at the chameleon with a smile. And then he claims that the girl is also her brother's friend. The main character thinks in shock what the little girl said and whether she understood correctly. The girl already imagines what it would be like to be with Noel, but then she tries to drive away these thoughts and realizes that she seems to have heard incorrectly. After all, to call her a friend, there must be something between them, but there is nothing. Ava is trying to pull herself together and think carefully about the connection. Maybe the little girl meant friendly relations. But there are cultural differences between the North and South, and yet the word troop can have different meanings depending on the nationality of the speaker. For example, in the West, tigers eat grass. The girl takes the baby in her arms and thinks that it cannot be otherwise, and she must clearly explain everything to Rachel. Then Xian only asks if his sister is now Noel's friend, because if so, he can call the chameleon his friend. Then he hugs the guy and says that he is his new friend. Carmel laughs a little awkwardly, and then he says that judging by the way their young mistress treats them, whoever these guys are can't be wolves. Then he asks to be forgiven for the discourteous question. The young lady looks at the brunette and thinks why he is not at all surprised, and when their eyes intersect, the young man turns away in embarrassment. The main character understands that looking at him you can't tell that something is wrong, so she thinks how to understand what she called her friend. Rachel just looks at the young lady and asks her to hug her again. Eva then thinks that this is just a child, and it cannot be that she put such a meaning into the word. Therefore, she will need to ask Noel later. A little time later, Eve asks if it is time for Carmel to return. The guys answer that yes, and he is much better, so he doesn't want to cause them any more inconvenience. Then the girl invites him to have dinner with them and then leave, because the guy is probably hungry. Carmel just says it's okay, and he'll buy food on the way home, after which they say goodbye to the chameleon. Ava tells him to take care of himself, and next time if he passes by, let him grab it. But then the young lady thinks that maybe there won't be a next time because she met with the Southerners for such a short time. And yet she wonders whether the word friend in the South means the same as in the North. So she turns to Noel and says she's interested in something. Then the girl asks, is it possible that Southerners and Northerners use the same words to mean different things? For example, the word girlfriend. The guy just looks at her and says that he's in the South, but then asks where Rachel went. The main character also notices this and asks where she is. Then Noel says that he will go look and he thinks that the girl is seeing Carmel off. The young lady says she will then go around the area. The girl thinks that he never answered, and we can assume that this word does not mean anything special, so she decides to ask. Carmel is walking through the forest. He says that it is suspicious that the captain now has a girlfriend. The guy with green hair immediately understands that, in other words, this girl is his future life partner, and soon everything will change. The guy understands that he must return and tell the people of the South about this as soon as possible. After all, they must know that their captain is going to bring his life partner and her brother to the South. But suddenly, Phoenix Rachel flies up to him. The guy understands that this is the lady's bird, and when he turns around, he sees the boss and his sister behind him. Then the guy asks the captain if that benefactress is his future companion. The guy with green hair says he'll come home but his boss interrupts and asks what Carmel thinks about Eve's power. The guy claims that she has the most powerful ice magic he has ever seen. And then he screams that that's why they need to bring her to the South as soon as possible so that the girl can help them. But Noel just tells him to calm down and first need to make some preparations. He tells the guy to imagine because a dragon suddenly appears in the north and forces its inhabitants to go with him to the south. What he thinks these guys will do, but perhaps they will run away from fear. The guy with green hair says that he will talk to their people so that the benefactor and her brother will be given a decent reception. Rachel says that's right. And her brother adds that there's one more thing. After all, what will the Southerners think if Eve and her brother are presented as magicians from the North? Perhaps they will be mistaken for wolves, since magicians often are. Then the guy with green hair understands the situation and says what it means to explain to them that these guys are not wolves to avoid misunderstandings. Noel says that this is exactly what is needed, and the guy is very smart. Therefore, he completely trusts Carmel with this task. The young man with black hair claims that it will be very difficult, but he must cope. Then he asks if the guy can do it. The guy with green hair says that he will try his best so that no one thinks that the benefactress and her brother are wolves. Noel says that's good, and he's counting on Carmel. Then he leaves you to the estate. His colleague asks if the guy has met a person who can control the captain's inner fire. The guy with green hair replies that it's true, and he saw it himself, and that the girl also lives in the north. The man says that it is very strange and hard to believe that there is a lot of ice that he has never seen. After which he asks Carmel where this girl lives, because he must check everything himself and find out if this is really a person. The guy with green hair asks what he's talking about and whether the man is going north now. But the only answer he hears is that no matter how you look at this situation, it seems very strange. The man finds it hard to believe that there is an ice mock he has never met. One day the south was consumed by fire, and everyone was overcome with sadness. On the day the previous lord and his wife died from the current lord's uncontrollable power, he swore an oath to himself, who would do anything for their lord and young lady. To help him, he gathered the greatest ice magicians from all over the world, and he even entered into a secret conspiracy with the half-breed wolf, but it was all in vain. And now a magician suddenly appeared capable of controlling the lord's power. The guy understands that this must be a trick of the vile wolves, because the legend said so. The servant understands that he is obliged to protect their master. A short time later, the main character enters a bookstore. She asks if there is anything suitable. The young lady replies that she usually buys books at this place and there is a large selection. The girl says that it would be great if the guys had good children's books. Noel says he thinks so too. But Eva says that since they reduced its range, she can't even find anything for herself. When the guy asks what she is looking for, and the young lady replies that she is looking for books about the human world, and she wants to understand if there are any that will help her get there. Then the girl thinks it would be good to learn to pretend to be human. The main character asks how many such books are there in the South, and then whispers that since he is the head of the South, he should have a personal library. The young man with a smile on his face says that he is not sure because he never asked about her. Then the girl asks if it happens that in the North and South, the same word has different meanings depending on the situation. The guy asks what she's talking about, and the main character again talks about the word friend. She says that they apply it to her brother's wife, and when Rachel called her that, she and Carmel didn't react in any way. The guy just kept silent about the main character, then said that he shouldn't have asked because it's obvious. But Noel only turns to Eve and says, a little embarrassed, that this is practically what the word friend means. Then the main character is a little surprised and screams out what he is talking about. The girl wonders if she thought correctly and doesn't understand why Rachel called her that. The little girl just calmly eats her meal, and Eva continues her thoughts. She thinks why no one reacted to this, but then she sighs heavily. Noel says that he is sorry that the girl found herself in such an awkward situation. And it was worth correcting Rachel, but he couldn't open it. The main character only raises her head, and the young man adds that he hoped that these words will become reality. Then the young lady, a little embarrassed, asks what he is talking about, and the young man claims that he is sure the young lady noticed that he cannot control his powers very well. Because of this, he put her and his people in danger and caused huge disasters in the South. The guy clenches his fists and says that his parents died, and it's all because he was born with one heart. The girl says that usually dragons are born with two and can control their powers. The young man says that this is true, but he also caused the suffering of those who were next to him. Therefore, fear consumes Noel more and more the more valuable things he loses. He cannot stop thinking that it is possible for it to happen again, because many tried to help him, but nothing worked, and in the end, the only solution was this: that he is forced to wear various restraints, but the stronger he becomes, the more difficult it is for him to control. And then he met Eve. When they touched each other, a sudden gust of all-consuming power enveloped him. No one could control his power like this young lady, so in the end, even if it was childish, he could only ask her to stroke his hair. After all, only then does he feel how rare the cold is for him, which is why he did not object when Rachel called her a friend. The guy looks into the cup and thinks that the most important thing is that he couldn't say how much he liked their hug. The young man claims that he probably caused them a lot of trouble. The main character says that this is nothing, and he can explain himself to that guy later. However, everything now became clear and good to the girl that her strength, which she considered useless, could help Noel. But Eve is just a minor character who quickly disappeared from the plot. For myself, who was burned, and for Zion, who suffered. Therefore, the girl cannot agree to help Noel just because of her unimpressive sympathy for her, and now that Rachel's memories are back, she can go south. And she must think about how they can get into the human world before it becomes even more difficult. The only thing she can do for Noel. It hopes that he will find his soulmate. Well, suddenly, the main character's hand twitches. The girl doesn't understand why everything in her chest suddenly became so tight. At this time, that same servant from the estate is wandering around the north. He wonders why it's so damn cold in the north. The man thinks how careless it was of him not to think about the weather before heading north, because he has no money with him, so he can't even buy basic winter clothes. He had already approached one saleswoman, who asked if he had taken money with him. The man claimed that he would honestly return and pay, so can the woman give him a loan? Natalia screams whether he takes her for an idiot, and then he calls the servant a fraud and tells him to get lost. The man is shocked by this and curses the damn wolves. He also furiously screams that this weather suits them, but does not have time to finish his sentence before he sneezes. The man thinks that it is so cold there that the fire does not flare up, and no matter what happens, the wolves will never win his heart. He can't believe that the captain's other half lives in such a place, and she must have used a clever trick. Suddenly, someone turns to his uncle and asks if he is cold. It turns out to be Zion. The man thinks that this is just a curious wolf cub. He waves to the baby to move on. But the boy with white hair says he looks cold and has snot coming out of his nose. The servant screams that nothing is flowing, and the young man doesn't even know who he is. The man claims that their weather is terrible, and the boy with white hair just takes off his scarf and says that he will give it away. The servant refuses and says that he doesn't feel the cold, but thinks how warm this scarf is. Well, after all, it needs to be returned. However, the man still says that he will borrow the scarf for a while, and Zion is happy about this. After which he takes the servant by the hand, and the man asks if the boy with white hair has lost his sister. Zion claims that he still exists, and he chased the kitten, after which he got lost without realizing it, and also lost his brother and Ruby. The man realizes that this is a missing child. He says that the boy with white hair gave the scarf to help him find his sister, and claims what a mischief he is. But Zion says this is not true, and he would have given this scarf even if he had not been lost, because his uncle also offered him help when he learned that he was in trouble. The boy with white hair continues his speech and claims that his sister says that if you treat someone kindly, then one day it will be rewarded, and since his uncle helped him, God will bless him for it. The man did not expect to meet such a kind child in the north, no matter if he was a wolf. The servant swears on his honor that he will not leave him until they find his sister. But suddenly, the young man screams that this is his sister. The man thinks how easily everything was resolved, and the young lady screams how much more time to tell Zion not to run away alone. The man realizes that this girl is the older sister of the boy with white hair, but then he sees the captain and Mrs. Rachel behind him. The man immediately approaches the table and thinks why he is there, but then the realization comes to him that this is the same companion that Carmel was talking about. So he asks the boy with white hair if this girl is his sister. The boy with white hair says that it is so, and the man then asks if this girl is the one who said that if you treat someone kindly, then one day it will be rewarded. The servant understands that such an elegant and kind girl is definitely a person. Therefore, he is a little sorry that he suspected her. Let the captain stare at him like that. The man turns to the boy with white hair and thanks him, and then claims that there is a reward for kindness, and he is sure that the young man will soon receive it. After which he puts his hand on the baby's head and leaves. Zion cries out to the uncle took the scarf with him. The man turns around and confidently thanks the boy with white hair. He claims that he no longer feels the cold and then leaves. The main character thinks that this man does not seem strange. Rachel realizes that Zion seemed to really like the servant, and the lady with white hair suggests that they go to the store and then go home. Everyone agrees. A little time later, the main character is already going out with shopping. She thought that by the end of the day, she would have to look. Zion may not be able to buy food, but the children have become real helpers. The boy with white hair said that he and Ruby would buy meat, and Noel claimed that he would follow them. And then the girl remembers what Noel said in the morning. The young lady thinks whether it would be right to ignore his words. But suddenly he hears someone screaming, and when the girl comes around the corner, she sees several men. One of them asks if the girl thinks she can escape from them so easily. The young lady just screams that she didn't get into anyone's sight and didn't cause trouble. She doesn't understand why the guys suddenly started behaving like that. The girl also screams why only half-breeds are arrested and interrogated. Main character, she thinks a little in shock that she hasn't heard about half-breeds being arrested, and the girl screams that this is discrimination. Then one of them turns to Captain Edu. The main character thinks whether the half-breed wolves will be arrested, but she doesn't understand why so suddenly. At this time, the guy turns to the young lady and asks if he wants to say that because of her, they didn't have any troubles or losses. But then, who made their way into the world of people and jeopardized the reputation of wolves? Another young man claims that his blood boils at the mere thought that the damn people can despise them and raises his hand to hit the girl. But suddenly the captain tells him to stop because he wants to ask the young lady a question, after which he claims that if the girl agrees to cooperate, then she and her brother will be safe. Then the captain asks if she knows a half-brother and sister who have white hair and rare blue eyes. He tells the girl to tell him everything he knows about them, but suddenly an apple falls from around the corner and one of the guys asks someone. The girl quickly runs away around the corner. She hopes that she simply misunderstood, and they are not looking for her and Zion, because they have been living in solitude for a long time. But the guy said that half-breeds have white hair and a rare blue eye color. Therefore, the girl suddenly thinks that they are still looking for them, and then imagines the worst outcome. The girl is very scared, and thinks that she needs to leave the north as quickly as possible, but she doesn't understand how to do this and what illegal methods of migration exist. She arranges the books on the table and realizes that they can't just move to another place without getting permission first. Eve thinks that she will do anything just to get out of there with Zion, but suddenly someone turns to the main character. It turns out to be Noel. He claims that the girl came home before them. The guy asks what she was doing. Does Eva need help? Then the girl was a little embarrassed. She says that she was just looking for something and thinks that she will soon get it done, so she asks if Noel can wait in the hall for now. The guy only sees people's books and tries to ask Eve about it, but Rachel gets ahead of him and asks if the girl wants to move to the human world. The main character says with a smile that this is not so, but the girl says that there is no need to hide this from them because they know that Eva is trying to find a way to move there. The lady with white hair thinks how did they know and how much do they know about this, and they may even know that they are wolves. Rachel says she understands because it must be difficult for a young lady to live in a foreign land for so long. Therefore, she asks if the girl will go with her, because once she and her brother were in the human world, so they know how to get there. The main character, in shock, asks if Rachel's memory has returned. The little girl says that the memories are blurry, so she is not sure that she completely remembered everything. And if the girl is not mistaken, then Noel once said that in the south there is a passage leading to the world of people. And in other words, it's easier to get there through the south. The young man understands what his sister is hinting at. Therefore, she claims that she is right, because they signed an agreement and built a ship to make it easier for residents to travel. The main character is shocked by these words. After all, according to these two, an illegal method of immigration does exist, but the girl does not understand whether she can be sure that the South is safe for them. After all, they don't yet know who Eve and Zion really are, but suddenly Noel addresses her by name. He grabs the girl by the hand and asks if the young lady will honor him with the honor of escorting her and Zion to the world of people. The main character thinks how warm he is, and the guy continues and says that he will not allow others to spread gossip that they are wolves just because they came from the north, and will also protect him from all adversity. Eve thanks him for his kindness, but asks if it won't be a burden for them, because without this, they helped her a lot with Zion, but Noel says not to worry about it. He puts his hand on the little girl's head and says that he will take advantage of her situation to take Rachel home to the south, and that is enough for him. But the little girl sees that Zion is a little worried, so she decides to approach him. The young lady says they can stop by their house on the way. Ona hugs the young man and says that he wants to see his sister and Zion as long as possible. The boy with white hair says he wants to be with Ruby too. Ava thinks that this may be her last chance. If they continue to doubt, the only way to the south will be closed. They will see each other less often and eventually become strangers to each other, because children quickly forget everything, including promises, which are consigned to oblivion. Rachel grins and thinks that she will never allow the young lady to go into the human world, because very soon she will become her relative. Noel, with a smile on her face, says that she will instruct her people to accompany the young lady and Zion to the south as soon as possible, and the little girl realizes that the girl will not go to the human world because she will make her fall in love with the south and forget about everything else. At this time, the captain is told that they have brought the person he wanted to see, after which the guy says to search for this person to enter. He asks if this guy is a herbal dealer. The young man then asks where the merchant got this herb from. The guy with purple hair says that it is from the doctor, and he thought that this herb was good for the immune system, so he bought it. The young men say that he is pleased with the doctor's kindness and dedication, so he wants a chance to start everything from scratch. But the person standing in front of him is not a doctor, but a simple distributor. He claims that he understands that the young man was pushed to do this by necessity, and then he throws a bag of money at his feet and tells him to tell him everything about the man who gave him this herb. And the more details, the better. A young man with purple hair looks at this money. He understands that it will be beneficial for him to tell, so he begins to talk. The guy claims that he did not see the man's face clearly because he wore a mask at every meeting. But he is quite thin, and even though he insisted that he was a man, most likely he was a girl. The guy claims that he doesn't know if she intended to speak in a low voice, but she sounded quite tense. This girl had white hair, if he's not mistaken. The captain's words claim that the guy's testimony matches the report of one businessman. The young man says that this is good, and it looks like this is the same person. The guy with purple hair asks what he's talking about, and the captain replies that the man they're looking for is suspected of helping with illegal migration to the human world. And the guy with purple hair is one of those who assisted her in this crime. So the captain says to take him away. The young man screams that he is innocent and did not know who the girl was, but the guy with silver hair tells him to then understand that ignorance does not relieve responsibility. When this young man is taken away, the captain leans back in his chair and sighs. He is holding someone's photograph in his hands, and he claims that now he can finally help Eve. At this time, the main character is talking with Noel. The guy says that before moving into a new house, some formalities need to be settled, so he will return to the south for a couple of days to prepare everything, but it won't take much time. And the young man claims that he will come for her as soon as possible. The main character says that she will wait. But then, seeing the guy fly away in the form of a dragon, she is a little surprised. She thinks how beautiful it is. And if she and Zion manage to get out of the north, then they will be able to live independently. She heard that there is a large desert in the west. The girl understands that Zion likes warm places, so it would be great to clean up her place and enjoy life. But first, they will need to figure out how to get out of the south. After all, if Rachel returns home safe and sound, they will no longer need to meet, which means the guy will not lead them into the human world. The main character sighs and thinks how stupid she is, because she can't even take care of herself, let alone others, if one day Noel meets her fate. Then he will no longer need her powers until they reach the human world. Then the young lady will need to help when Noel asks, and this will be payment for all the good that he did to them. At this time, the captain of the North is asked if he will go to investigate today. The guy says yes. After all, this is his first task as a captain, and he cannot shirk because he is responsible for execution. The servant says he will try very hard. The guy looks at Eva's photo and says that since they are going out anyway, he wants to look at that place first. But suddenly, someone shouts to the captain that they have urgent news. One of the servants asks if the guy is out of his mind and how he dares to break into the captain's office without asking. The young man with gray hair tells him that there is no need to make a mountain out of a mountain, and probably something important forced the guy to behave this way. The servant asks for forgiveness and says what? A letter has arrived from the dragon captain. The young man with gray hair thinks about the captain of the North. The sheet said that he and his subordinates were going to visit the faces of the North in 3 days, and information about the location would be described below. Therefore, the captain can familiarize himself and give consent since they will not stay there for a long time. There's no need for special welcoming ceremonies. Slua says that even if this is a letter from the captain, but is it really possible to address them like that? Because this is complete disrespect for the North. A young man with gray hair puts the leaf to his face and says that his servant is right, because the captain clearly despises them. Moreover, it is very suspicious that he asks them not to organize a welcoming ceremony. I am arrogant and powerful dragons would do that. He gets angry and tells his servant to cancel some special events in the next 3 days. He wonders what this damn dragon needs, so he plans to see it with his own eyes. The young lady is packing her things at this time. Zion tells his sister that they have collected all their things, and can they go play now? The main character asks if this is true and says that she will check now, but the children do not listen to her and run away into the street. Eve looks at the almost empty room and thinks that they won't need a lot of things to begin with, because they can buy everything they need in the human world. But suddenly, she hears her brother scream. The young lady immediately runs outside and asks what happened. She uses her ice power in preparation for an attack, but Sion only looks in surprise. That girl, seeing that many dragons have flown towards her in the air, thinks what is happening. But then he turns to her. Noel says that he came to pick up the girl. The main character in shock asks who these people are. Then the guy asks to forgive them for the sudden visit, and says that these are his most trusted people. They will help them get to the south as soon as possible, and there are not many of them, but the young man thinks that they will be able to transport all their things. The guy says that the preparations must have tired Eva, so they suggest that she go on vacation with the children and leave the rest to them. The young lady doesn't understand what he's talking about, but then Zion turns to her. He asks his sister if they will leave the north now. The girl asks if he will miss him, and the little boy with white hair answers that he won't, and then approaches the young lady, and he whispers in her ear that as long as she is with him, it doesn't matter where they are. The main character hugs him and says that she too, and very soon they will move to a warm place that Zion will like. But suddenly, Eve hears the conversations of other dragons. They say what a lovely family bond this is. One of the dragons, with tears in his eyes, says that since childhood he lived only in the south, so he has no idea what the north is like, but it looks amazing. The main character realizes that she forgot that they are not alone there. The girl thinks that she needs to be more careful, but suddenly another dragon calls his colleague an idiot and asks if he thinks that the captain's companion and her brother live alone in the forest for no reason. The young lady is shocked, and the other dragon says that his colleague is right, and she has an excellent, delicious choice of places to live, and in his opinion, it would be ideal to hold their wedding there. From such words, the main character almost turns to stone, and at this time, the dragons continue to talk and claim that the ceremony should take place in the south. Ava, I think why Southerners already call her life partner. The girl doesn't understand where this rumor came from and what she should do, because she needs to explain everything to the dragons. Well, suddenly the young lady hears someone's voice. The guys say that when he read that the captain doesn't want any welcome ceremonies, then he became curious about what urgent matter forced him to rush in such a hurry. It turns out that it is the captain of the North, Ed. He says that now everything is clear, and the one who is responsible for illegal immigration is in the South. Ed says that to avert suspicion, Noel even gave them false coordinates, so the wolf captain asks if he thought they would fall for it and wait there. He also states that it is now clear how much the dragon captain despises wolves. A young man with gray hair furiously asks why Noel wants to take the inhabitants of the North with him to the South, and whether he plans to get information about wolves from them. He claims that he would never have thought that he would resort to such a method. But suddenly the young man's gaze falls on the main character, which makes him a little embarrassed, and asks if the girl's name is Eva. The main character is scared by this, and the captain says that there can be no mistake. He begins to approach the young lady and says that it is really her, but he has finally found Eve. But suddenly Noel grabs his hand. The wolf captain turns around and asks him what he wants. And then he says to remove his hand, but Eve only asks why he is there. The girl claims that they lived in isolation as Ed wanted. Xian is worried about his sister, and the main character screams with a request to leave them alone. The guy is shocked by this. He asks why the girl is suddenly angry at him, and then turns to Noel and screams for him to let him go. The girl says that this is all because it was he who told them to get out of sight, and they did like the captain, and said that's why Eva says to stop bothering them. The guy is silent at first, and then says that everything is as he thought, because he and his brother wanted to illegally move to the human world. The main character remembers that girl. She thinks whether the guy was really looking for them. The young lady asks what the wolf captain wants, and he replies that he just missed her. Eva, in shock, asks what he is talking about, and the guy continues and asks if the Southerners agreed to help them get into the human world in exchange for a favor for them, and if the reason for her desire to leave there was a misunderstanding between them when they were younger, then now she has nothing to worry about. Ed says that he has changed a lot, and now he has the power to take the girl under his wing. But suddenly, Noel comes up from behind and says that there must be some mistake because Eva is not leaving for the human world, and to the south with him. The wolf captain just smiles and says how stupid this is. And then he asks how the guy knows that she wants to go to the south and not to people. But the main character in the back says that Noel knows from her. The girl claims that it doesn't matter to her whether Ed has changed or what power he has received. She simply doesn't want to be there anymore. The young lady asks if he were in her place, he would want to stay living under restrictions. But then Ed asks why now, since he worked his ass off to get this position, because he knew that Eva had suffered enough from racism. The main character is a little scared. She wonders if the guy is going to tell them that they are a half-breed. The young man with gray hair continues to talk, and Eva in her thoughts asks Togo to shut up now. After all, if all these people find out who they are, then she and Zion may die. But suddenly Rachel arrives. She points to the girl and tells Carmel that this is her sister. The guy with green hair says with a smile, "This is where Mrs. Life Partner is." He comes closer to Eva. and he says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and then apologizes for keeping him waiting. Carmel claims that their things have already been loaded for transportation, and it's time to leave, but then you notice that the atmosphere there is a little strange. The captain of the wolves, in shock, asks if Eva is the life partner of Captain South. The main character is a little doubtful, but then says that everything is so. She passes Ed and claims to be Noel's date. The guy is shocked by this. The main character approaches the captain of the South and asks in a whisper to forgive her. She is shaking all over. And she says that this is the only way to make Ed leave them behind, and the girl promises that she will explain everything as soon as they arrive in the South. Eve says that she is incredibly sorry for disturbing Noel again, but the guy just smiles. And then, using power, he says that he understood her. He creates a large phoenix and says that it is time for him and his beloved to hit the road. The knights agree and begin to turn into dragons, but the captain of the North screams for them to stop now. He yells at Eve to tell the truth and asks if Noel threatened her. He also screams that this guy is dangerous, and the girl can't even imagine what abominations dragons are capable of, but the young lady doesn't think so. She furiously replies that Ed is the one who made her life miserable, and he is much more vile. The young man looks very hurt by this. He looks after the flying dragons and is lost in his thoughts. He understands that he cannot protect her now. The guy's father, a former captain of the North, taught him that half-breeds are not wolves. Everyone around the guy belittled them, so he did just that, however. When his and Eva's gaze first crossed, who even knew that the girl, simply despicable, was only half a wolf. But he couldn't help but be fascinated by her. Then the guy was too young to understand that he became attached to her. Ed was torn by guilt for his feelings for the half-breed. The guy was scared because many were watching him. But even so, he has no forgiveness for what he did to the young lady. From that moment on, he lived in regrets. On the way home, the boy with white hair decided that he should grow up quickly and become a captain. So that no one else could offend Eva, the guy understood that he would definitely make sure that the young lady would be nearby under his protection. Now he tells his servants to return. One of them asks if they should go in pursuit. Well, the captain only asks whether it is possible to catch those who fly and claims that they are powerless there. He turns around and says that therefore, let the wards choose a couple of smart and proven subordinates to go after the dragon secretly. The guy thinks that Eve is only half-wolf, so her power might get out of control. And who knows if these cruel dragons will take advantage of the young lady's weakness to brainwash her. Ed, he understands that now he can only continue to look for her. At this time, the main character and the guys are flying on a phoenix. The girl understands that they are finally flying to the South. The main character did not think that she would have the opportunity to go to the lands of dragons of her own free will. Eve sighs and realizes that life is full of surprises. Suddenly, Noel turns to her. The guy claims that they are almost there and asks the young lady to look down, because the view is very beautiful. The main character asks if it's really possible from such a height. Noel then says that if she doesn't mind, then blushes and stutters. She adds that he can hold her hand. Rachel puts her hands on her face at this, and she thinks her brother is hopeless. The main character's wife asks if the guy has a fever. The young man replies that everything is not like that, and he just wants the young lady to enjoy the view from there. He wants to show the girl many wonderful things, because she trusted him and came to the South. The guy says that he hopes Eva will have only happy memories before being sent to the human world. The main character thinks that Noel is very kind, but wonders if he will remain so if he finds out that the young lady is a half-breed. Previously, he did not suspect anything, but when he discovers the truth, everything could end badly. Rachel turns to her sister and says that what she is thinking about will never happen. The main character asks what she is talking about, and the girl says that something seems to be bothering Eva and asks if the young lady is afraid of falling. Only the half-wolf agrees and says yes, because she has never flown. At the same time, Eva thinks that the girl scared her. The main character says that for a moment, she thought that Rachel could read minds. The girl just tells her not to worry because she will always be on her sister's side. After this, he offers to enjoy the view of the sky together. The main character remembers the words of her mother. The woman told her daughter that dragons are not as scary as she thinks. A little girl asked if her mother had ever met one of them. The woman says that they are completely. Then Eva lies down with her head on the bed and says that means her mother doesn't know anything. The woman puts her hand on her daughter's head and says that her great-grandmother told her that dragons are kind. The little girl says that it was a very long time ago, and her mother, with a smile on her face, answers that the rumor about it survived until their time and dragons are a very gentle creature. Therefore, the woman said about her daughter that if she met a dragon, she should be kinder to him. The main character extends her hand and asks if Noel will hold her and Zion so that they don't fall. The dragon captain agrees, and the lady with white hair looks at all these landscapes. When they arrive at the castle, they are very surprised. Zion asks if they are in heaven. The main character says that it looks like that. This is not how she imagined the South at all, and cannot believe that there are so many flowering plants there. A boy with white hair tells the young lady to look because something has landed on his arm. The main game, Don't Tell the Butterfly State, and she had only seen them in books before. Insect flies away, and the boy with white hair runs after him. Eva is worried about him and tells him not to jump because he might fall, but suddenly he crashes into someone. The kid with white hair apologizes, and the man says that he knows how to apologize and be responsible. The servant then puts his hand on his head and asks if Song was doing well. The young lady realizes that this is the man, and the servant says that last time he failed to greet the girl properly. The man claims his name is Hopper, and he serves under the command of a captain. He apologizes for being so late and asks to accept gratitude for the help. The main character understands that she saw him in the novel and that he is a versatile man who hates wolves. Although now the story is different from what she imagined, and the man seems friendly, but she still does not feel comfortable in his presence. Hopper says that if the young lady needs anything, he asks her to let him know. Eve says that if so, can she get a book in the form of a scroll, which is only available in the South. The man is a little wary. He says that they have a library of scrolls, but now it will be difficult to get into it. The main character understands that he is still vigilant, but the girl understands that if she were in his place, she would also not have answered the stranger from the North's request for a scroll. The man says that the road must have been difficult, and then snaps his fingers. After which the young lady is already taken away by two maids. He says that first the girl should take an antidote and change into lighter clothes that are suitable for the weather of the South. A little time later, the main character is already washed and well-dressed, looking at this mansion. Hopper says the head of the department went to deal with the backlog of cases. Eva thanks him, because even though she is a stranger there, everyone treats her well. The man just smiles. He claims that the girl is the commander's companion, and the main character first lowers her eyes to the floor and is silent for a while, and then he says to just call her Eve. Hopper says that the young lady is too modest and asks if he dares to call her by her name. But the girl says that it would really be more convenient for her. He understands that he should say that he is not the captain's companion, but the words just don't want to be uttered. Then the servant asks if he can ask why the young lady needed a library, because if she says, then the guy can find her a couple of books. The main character says that she couldn't find books about the South and the North, so she ended up there. Wants to read the dragon legend to help Noel. The girl wonders if she really intends to become the companion of the dragon captain. Hopper says that now it is clear to him, and that in general it would be enough for Noel to have the girl nearby. But knowing history is also good, and it will help you get used to the South, so he will guide the young lady. The main character understands that she needs to be careful, because if she is discovered, then Zion will be in danger, and Noel too, because he has not yet found a real companion. The girl thinks that, unfortunately, she has poor control over her emotions. The young lady realizes that she is hopeless. That evening, Eva sits with books. She reads about the history of the southern Caspian continent. The book says that God rules the heavens, and the world is destroyed while people rule the earth. Dragons, whose lives are close to immortality, descended into this world. At first, they could not get used to the new environment, but with the help of their wisdom and the red dragon, they managed to establish themselves safely in the south. However, soon the number of clashes between the proud and the dragons began to increase, and the beast people began to suffer from this. So they asked the strongest red dragon to become their head. He had a kind heart, so the guy took the weak under his wing. Meanwhile, some people in wolves mistakenly decided that dragons had captured the south. The head was wounded when he fell for the evil trick of the people, and the wolf took advantage of the situation and stole his heart. The first head could not cope with the overabundance of his power with just one heart. His situation was deplorable, so the dragon went north to return the heart, but they failed to find Togo Volg, and ultimately the head of the dragons died. After which a war began between North and South. The whole country was destroyed during it, and the war ended thanks to the intervention of the head of the mermaids from the west and the head of the lions from the east. After claiming that the wolf sold his heart to the dragon hunter he was collaborating with, a second war broke out between the South and the human world. Because of all these events, the world of people and animals was divided, so it became impossible to restore good relations between the South and the North, and the location of the heart remained unknown. The main character wonders if this is all, because she didn't find any clues. The girl wonders if Eve from the book could influence Noel's fever because she was a wolf with that heart. But the young lady understands that everything cannot be like this, because otherwise she would not have died from Rachel's fire, because the dragon's fire cannot burn the heart of such a strong dragon as Noel. The more the main character thinks about it, the more confused she becomes. The girl makes various guesses. A little time later, Rachel comes into the library. She tells her sister that Zion fell asleep because he had a busy day today. But the girl only sees that Eva is sleeping. The little girl sits down on a chair and says that the young lady seems very tired. But it's understandable to believe that there was just a lot of trouble, so it would be worth taking the main character to her chambers. But then the baby comes up with a better plan. The girl thinks it would be better to take Eva to the bridal room. The main character has a dream where she was little. The girl wanted to go through the forest with her father. The guy takes one flower out of the ground and shows it to his daughter. He claims that it is a plant created by magic. The little girl just gets angry at him and screams for him to hurry up and quickly collect the grass because it is already frozen. The man only says with a smile that she is swearing again. The main character says that it snows so much there and they have to collect these herbs. Well, her father says that they need to return as soon as possible. The little girl does not understand what happened because the snow suddenly stopped. She turns to her father and asks if he did this and if he has such an ability. But the guy only looks at his hand in horror, after which the main character wakes up. The girl immediately jumps out of bed and wonders what kind of place this is, and why she is wearing different clothes. The young lady gets out of bed and calls for her brother and Rachel, but someone says that the children are together in the other room. When the main character turns around, she sees Noel there. The guy asks if she slept well, and the girl only asks in response why he is there. Then Noel replies that these are his chambers. Ava asks in shock if this is true. And then he apologizes and says that he will leave right away. The young man gets up from his desk and says everything is fine. After all, it is quite natural that she is there, because everyone in the palace considers her the captain's companion. The guy claims that they prepared separate chambers for her, and then he says that if she is uncomfortable, he will go somewhere, but when he gets up, he screams in pain. The girl asks if he hurts somewhere, and Noel replies that everything is fine, and he just has a slight fever. Then the main character grabs his hand and offers her help, after which the two of them sit on the bed. The young lady holds his hand and says that since they arrived in the South, the guy has not rested and has probably worked a lot. The dragon captain says that is true and he is very tired today. But he, all embarrassed, says that he is glad that Eva is there. The young lady does not understand what is happening because his face is red. The girl puts her hand to his head and says that Noel seems to have a fever, and then asks if he's really okay. The guy claims that's not why he blushed, but then decides not to say it after all. Therefore, he claims that it seems to be a matter of temperature. He takes Ava's hand in his, and a little embarrassedly asks if she would allow herself to be hugged. The main character screams, "What is he talking about?" The lady with white hair is already embarrassed by this, and Noel is only approaching her. He says that when a girl is nearby, all his thoughts are confused. The young man asks to stay like this for just a moment. The main character says that if this makes him feel better, then good. The girl thinks that perhaps he can calm down in a hug and understands that it's just a hug because friends do that too. But the young lady notices that she can hear how hard his heart is beating and wonders why this is so, and also whether this could be because of her. But if she is right, is it worth showing courage now? Eve turns to Noel and asks her to forgive her. The girl understands that this might turn out badly, but she still wants to know. The young lady asks if the young man was curious why she is not in the guise of a beast and living in the north. Eve wonders whether Noel will like her if he finds out that the girl is a half-breed. But when the main character looks at his face, she sees surprise in the captain's eyes. She thinks what to do now and understands that she asked this question in vain. The young lady asks if the guy is surprised. She apologizes and says that she is tired, and that's why she is talking nonsense. But when the girl tries to step back, who trips over her pajamas and falls on the captain, the main character is embarrassed. She didn't even think about what to do in such a situation. The girl says that it was an accident and apologizes. She claims that she will get up now. But the guy just hugs her. He says that the young lady is right and he is curious. And then he adds that he wants to know everything about her, what she was like as a child, about her favorite food, about the thoughts that she devotes. And perhaps she would like to keep silent about something, and therefore he will not force her. but no matter what, his feeling will not change. When I heard this, I began to talk about myself. The girl says that when she was a child, she liked to spend time with her father. They made flowers out of ice and played. The father was a man. Well, the main character thinks that he knew how to control ice. Sometimes the spells didn't work and the snow melted. She also learned medicinal herbs because of him. Noel smiled calmly and listened to Eve until he fell asleep, although the young lady could not admit that she was a half-breed. But the young man's smile seemed to say that he would accept her no matter who the girl turned out to be, and it was a very emotional moment. Rachel is sitting with papers at this time. A little girl is considering candidates for the role of her sister's maid. After Togo finds a suitable one, who tells the bird to tell the servants that this maid will work for her sister. But then Sion turns to her. The young man asks why Ruby is not sleeping. The girl tells the boy with white hair that he has ears and a tail. Then he screams and quickly hides them. The lady with black hair says she's worried about him and can't sleep, and Zion says it's too warm there, so he relaxed. Then the girl says that he needs to hide his ears and tail well. Then the guy asks where his sister went and where he is now. Rachel says that sister is at home, and from now on Zion has her own room, so don't look for the young lady. A boy with white hair screams why he can't, and the girl replies that it's already late, and it would be indecent to go to her now. Zion says that they always slept together, and Rachel replies that now she'll have to learn to sleep alone. The boy with white hair says that in the north, they only had one room with a fireplace. The lady with black hair understands that she should not let Zion near these two. Therefore, he asks if the boy with white hair wants to become an adult as soon as possible. The young man agrees and says that he will become as strong and pumped up as his brother. Ruby then says that he will have to stick to the rules. She hands Sion a piece of paper and tells him to write. The boy with white hair does so about the first rule: you can't go to your sister at night. But then the boy with white hair with tears in his eyes says that he cannot sleep alone because he is scared in the dark. Rachel says that she knows, so the second rule is that when he is scared, he should go to her room. She is opposite him. Sion agrees, and the lady with black hair with a smile on her face thinks that the young man is so cowardly. But he said that he would protect her. The girl thinks what a fool he is, and yet, looking at the paper, Rachel realizes that he can write. The next morning, the main character wakes up in bed, but as soon as she opens her eyes, the first thing she sees is Noel's chest. The young lady immediately jumps out of bed, embarrassed, and the dragon captain asks if she woke up and if she slept well, after which he says that if the girl doesn't object, then he will steal her time for a little while longer. After all, in the morning, the temperature seems to rise. The young lady agrees. She remembers that yesterday she chatted and fell asleep. And in the morning, I completely forgot that I was in his bed. Noel. He just hugs her. He claims with a smile on his face that hugging her is the most pleasant thing. The main character thinks how loudly he speaks. Well, at this time someone screams in the corridor, and Eva asks what happened. The dragon captain says that it looks like her maid has arrived and tells her to come in. Then a young lady with pink hair comes into the room. Her name is Julia Carrot, and from now on she will serve the mistress. The girl says that he hopes they will get along, and in her thoughts adds that, by order of Mistress Rachel, from this day on she will serve her. Since the young lady is a rabbit, her hearing is sharper than others, and the lady probably talked about this ability of hers. Today she met her mistress for the first time, so she was a little worried. Standing in front of the door, the maid remembered the words that her mistress had beautiful white curls like snow. But then she heard the captain's words that the temperature seemed to be rising in the morning. The maid had already managed to come up with all sorts of things after saying that hugs with Eva were the most pleasant. The maid was a little embarrassed and wondered if she could even listen to this. She now introduces herself to her mistress and claims that it is an honor to serve her. The main character says her name is Eva. Noel says that he will go, and they will see each other in the restaurant. The maid only thinks how beautiful the lady is. The dragon captain asks if the girl wants anything special, and the young lady says that she is not fully awake yet and is not very hungry. The guy says that she needs to eat well, especially on difficult days like yesterday. The maid, hearing this, gets embarrassed and thinks what a sweet couple this is. When the main character starts eating, she is surprised at the amount of food on the table. She wonders if this is just breakfast, but it's not even lunch. Noel asks if this kind of food is her taste. The young lady only asks with saliva if she can get the recipe from the chef, and the guy replies that he will ask her, after which he asks if the girl used that balm because he chose it himself, but was not sure whether she would like the aroma. Eva says it's great, and it's her first time using something like this. The guy says that he will prepare more flavor options so that she can use different ones to suit her mood. The young lady thinks that Noel seems to wear perfume too, and it's no surprise that he always smells good. The main character is already embarrassed by such thoughts. Noel says that Eve is blushing, and the girl screams that it's just very hot in there, but then decides to confess. And she says that she actually remembered last night. The dragon captain smiles. He approaches the young lady and asks with a smile what happened then, because she was incredibly sweet and charming. The main character is embarrassed and asks what he is talking about. She claims that she thought incorrectly about completely different things. The guy thinks about which ones, and the girl says that she just liked his smell, that is, the aroma of perfume. The maids just cover their ears and say that they didn't hear anything. At the same moment, Zion bursts into the room, and Eve thinks she is saved. A boy with white hair runs up to his sister with a smile on his face. He says that he slept alone yesterday and asks what sister will say to this. The young lady thinks that he is great, and with his help, she escaped the disaster. She takes him on her lap and asks if her Zion has become an adult. Two servants with hair on their heads come running after the boy with white hair. They tell the master to be careful, and when they see Eve, they immediately bow down and wish her good morning. Zion says that these are his friends, and the girl awkwardly says what nice guys they are. Ruby comes running into the room after them. She says that it's impossible to keep up with the boy with white hair, and he runs very fast. Or rather, she runs slowly so he can't keep up with him. The young man apologizes, and Rachel walks up to her sister and opens her arms as if expecting a hug, after which the main character sits her on her lap and says that her girl has also become more mature. She smiles and says that it's nice to hear. A little girl asks if she slept well last night. The main character replies that she did and asks what about her. Rachel says that she does too, and Zion looks at the two and says that Ruby is cheating. The girl, with a smile on her face, continues and says that it seemed to her that if her sister was not around, she would have nightmares. But last night the dreams were wonderful. The lady with white hair asks if this is true, because if so, it's nice. Noel, watching all this, cannot help but smile. He thinks how much fun everyone is having, and this is the first time since his parents left them that he has seen Rachel smile like that. The young man with black hair thanks Eve and Zion for this. He understands that this girl makes everyone around her happy, and what he wanted before no longer interests him. The young man only wants Eva to become his wife, the only one who will be with him for the rest of his life, his love forever. But suddenly behind him, he hears someone's voice asking if this is true. And does Noel believe her, because suddenly the girl is lying to him? The dragon captain, hearing an unfamiliar voice, immediately turns around. But there is no one behind except the servant, who asks what happened. The young man with black hair turns around and breathes heavily, and then says that everything is fine. The main character is also worried about him. She asks if Noel is okay. The guy apologizes with a smile and says that he was just lost in thought, and he wonders whose voice it was. He feels like he's heard it somewhere before. At this time, the maids in the kitchen are gossiping. The main character's maid says that's why the captain smiled so much today. The other maids say they can't believe it. The lady with pink hair asks if he did a bad job. But this morning they hugged so tightly. Then one of the maids screams a little embarrassedly that no matter how curious Julia may be, she shouldn't overhear such things. The maid asks what's wrong with this because it's good news, but suddenly the boss interrupts them. The woman asks who you have to be a captain so easily, and then she hits Julia with a vegetable and asks if the maid is supposed to go down to the kitchen and if she's going to leave, and tells the girls to wash the dishes. The lady with pink hair says that they themselves asked her to tell about everything. It leaves and says that this is some kind of nonsense because she is not talkative. The woman just looks at the table and says that there is a lot of food left, and maybe the northerners are too picky because they didn't finish what they started. One of the maids turns to Maria and says that they are waiting for her on the street. The boss asks why, and the girl claims that her name is Hopper. Then the woman goes outside. She asks if the man was going to praise her, and he replies that he did, because they really liked the food and Maria did a good job, so he thanks her. The woman says that if this is so, then why didn't they finish eating so much? The servant says that the girl has been very tired over the past few days and has not yet developed an appetite, and it seems that she wanted to go to the kitchen and learn to cook the same way. Then Maria thanks him for telling her about it. She is a little embarrassed and says that they are lucky to have the mistress. At this time, several people are wandering through the forest. One of them asks how long it is to get to the palace, and the other man in a robe says that there is still half a day left. It turns out to be the captain of the north with his servants. He takes off his hood and thinks that very soon he will find Eve. It's a warm, sunny afternoon outside, and Noel is still constantly busy, apologizing for keeping him waiting. The young lady says that it's okay, and she didn't even know he had so much work. She understands that Zion is carried away by his new friends, and Rachel is now inviting her sister to play together. The main character thinks that she likes the little girl more than she expected, and the girl claims that sister said that her magic is the best. Eva thinks that she was afraid that their meeting would take place like in a novel, but now she only wishes the baby happiness. Now Rachel shows her the highest place in the castle, from which the whole south is visible. A little later, she brings her sister to the clearing and offers to have a picnic there. Eva understands that this was not the relationship between Little Red Riding Hood and the she-wolf in the fairy tale, and perhaps they will become good friends. When they return from that tree, the main character smells a very tasty smell. Julia says it's coming from the kitchen, and she heard there's turkey for dinner today. The young lady says that this is wonderful, and in her thoughts, she hopes that every day will be so peaceful. But suddenly, someone jumps out at her from behind the bushes and says that he has finally found Eve. It turns out that this is the captain of the North, and the main character thinks whether one can only dream of such peaceful days. She asks what the guy is doing and why he is in the South, and Rachel runs up behind her. The little girl uses her powers and angrily tells the guy to get away from her sister. He just grins and says that she is the sister of the head of the South who is watching him. He jumps back and screams that they fooled Eve and are still worried that he will be able to reason with her, but this is disgusting and ridiculous. Rachel asks what he said and what else they fooled. Well, the guy doesn't let her finish and uses his powers. The main character is shocked by this. She screams out the name Rachel. The captain of the wolves shakes his hands. He says that even though the girl is a dragon, she is still small and does not realize her involvement in the rebellion. Eva screams that he is crazy and asks what he did to the girl. The servant says that she is the younger sister of the head of the South, and if he finds out, but Ed says that she just lost consciousness and it will not harm her. After which the guy turns to Eva. He approaches her with a smile on his face. He says that it's scary in the South, so he suggests returning to the North as soon as possible. The main character is shocked by such words, and the maid immediately grabs the man and screams for her mistress to run away from there. Ed just sighs, and then one of the servants of the captain of the North pushes her away. At these sounds, more servants avoid. They scream what is happening there, and what kind of sound is coming from the back door. Ed just says how much it pisses him off, and he orders his ward to clean up there, and in the meantime, he will take Eve away. The main character only furiously turns to him, and then she claims that she will finish him off. The guy is surprised by this answer, but then sighs again and says that they fooled her well. Then he uses his powers and tells Eve to be patient a little, because it's time to say goodbye to these scoundrels. The main character just comes up to him and grabs him by the neck. She furiously claims that no one deceived anyone. And then he uses his ice powers and says what a soulless guy. At this time, rumors have already resorted to these two. There is dust in the air, so they don't understand what happened there. But when the woman looks, she sees her mistress. She, looking at Rachel and the wolf captain lying down, asks what happened there. A little time later, Ed opens his eyes, and the first thing he sees is Noel's servants. They tell him to wake up there. But when the guy looks at them, he sees that he is tied up, and Eve is also standing in front of him. The girl asks if the servants can leave them alone. They ask if the lady is sure, and assert that it is better for them to stay with her. But the girl says that if something goes wrong, she will immediately call them, and then she claims that she needs to deal with something. The captain of the North asks why everything turned out this way, and the girl understands that she didn't even try to explain the situation to him. She used ice magic to finish him off. Something prevented her, or rather it was Ed's ability, and it seems that the girl had encountered something similar before, the day she first met Noel, but she knows it doesn't matter now. One of the servants claims that they will wait outside and let the mistress call if something happens. The main character understands that, firstly, she needs to deal with this guy. She bends over to him, and he claims that this is the first time they are talking like this, because usually the young lady ran away from him. The girl asks why he is pursuing her if he hated her. Well, the young man replies that everything is not so. Eva asks what he's talking about, and the captain of the North says that he sincerely apologizes for what he did when they were children, and he understands why the girl accuses him. Ed looks up and says that if only the young lady could forgive and give him a chance. But the main character interrupts him and says that he doesn't want to, because why should she? Because even if every wolf begs for her forgiveness, then she still won't return to the North, because after everything she's experienced, this place is like hell for her. And due to the fact that she is a half-wolf, no one went to look for her father when he disappeared. So she had to use the search for herbs as an excuse to go everywhere to look for him, and her mother had to give birth without a nurse or doctor, after which she got sick and died. The girl asks how Ed can ask her to return north and if he was sorry to lose his toy. The guy claims that everything is wrong, and he never thought about her that way. He swears that this will not happen again, and if the young lady wants, he will find all her offenders and then bring them, including himself. The captain of the North claims that he is ready to do anything for Eve, but the girl just looks at him with an empty gaze. And then she says that her brother didn't even remember his parents, so he often asked if they abandoned them. The young lady said that they were really looking forward to his appearance, but they had to travel far for work and the boy with white hair only needs to sleep 1,000 nights, and then they will return. When time passed, he stopped asking about them. The main character thought that he was counting those nights, but it turned out that everything was wrong, and Zion himself understood everything. The young lady with tears in her eyes says that the boy with white hair realized that they are no longer in this world. She asks if Ed said that he would do anything for her. And then she asks if he will save her parents, and if her brother will be able to see them. The guy just bows his head and doesn't know what to answer, and then apologizes. But Eve says it's too late, and then gets up. She says she didn't say this for the sake of an apology. The girl claims that if the captain of the North is really even a little sorry, then let him forget about her and never show himself. After these words, the main character leaves. And he leaves the young man with gray hair alone. But when the girl comes out, she sees Rachel next to her. She immediately comes up to her and says that the girl has woken up. She also asks how the little girl is feeling. And isn't she injured? The lady with black hair says that she is completely fine, but the main character looks at her. And she doesn't understand what happened because the baby has a slightly strange expression on her face. At this time, the maid with a bandage on her head runs up to the mistress. She is all excited about her. Therefore, he asks many questions about whether the young lady is safe or injured. The maid says that she almost went crazy when she found out that her mistress asked to be left alone with that wolf and asks if the guy offended her mistress. Ava just tells her to stop bothering her. Then the boss comes running. The woman takes the maid away and says that she is very sorry for her colleague. The lady with pink hair just screams that she had to protect her mistress. The main character turns to Rachel and says that they also need to rest. But when he looks at the place where the girl was, there is already no trace of her. The matter was settled, and the dragons were belatedly informed about what had happened. Now they had a good reason to destroy the North, but Rachel stopped them, and Ed disappeared before they came for him, leaving only a letter with a handwritten apology. Now the main character understands that she no longer wants to get involved in this matter since everything has been settled, but she does not understand why Rachel stopped the dragons. The young lady wanted to somehow carefully ask her this question and find out that she had not yet been discovered. But for some reason, the little girl behaved strangely, and the young lady really didn't like her expression. The maid turns to her mistress. The main character asks if she has already returned to work. And then he says that Julia needs to rest a little more, but the lady with pink hair claims that she is completely fine, and Maria treated her well, and it's also terribly boring to just lie there. The girl looks at the floor next to them on which the cat is sitting, and claims that lately this baby with white hair has been visiting them, and the girl constantly feeds him. But this cat appeared when the girl first arrived to them. The main character asks if he is a beastman, and the maid says that maybe so, but she doesn't know how to talk to him, because even if he is a beastman, he is still very small. Then the maid remembers another important detail, and asks if the lady could not talk about him. The main character asks why, and the girl replies that if someone finds out that she is taking care of an unknown kitten, they will immediately drive her away. The young lady turns around and sadly says it's true. The maid wonders if she said something wrong. But then, looking at her mistress, she realizes that this is not the point, and maybe the girl is simply tired of her daily routine or misses her native land. She runs away and asks the lady to wait a moment and returns a moment later. But no longer empty-handed, the girl is holding 2 glasses and a bottle of strong liquor in her hands. The main character asks what it is. The maid replies that it is a special and expensive wine. The young lady asks if it's alcohol, and the girl comes up to her and says that when there are too many thoughts, you can forget, and the best way to help with this is drinking. The main character wants to object, but when she looks at this bottle, she begins to have thoughts about whether she should save this bottle for later. There is also an interesting fact about this world, because even though it is a world of beastmen, there are also ordinary animals there, and most often beastmen take the form of people, but there are also those that retain animals. That evening, the dragon captain explores the ground near those boxes. Looking at his hand, he realizes that there are no traces of magic there, but he heard that Eve pacified the head of the North. However, the guy thinks that no matter how strong she is, it is quite difficult for a half-breed to resist a purebred wolf, and wonders how this is even possible. And there was no longer a single trace of magic left there, and they seem to have completely disappeared. But suddenly the guy remembers the moment of their meeting. He understands that even though the girl's father was a man, she can use ice magic. Although the girl is not so good at this, sometimes her charms quickly dissipate. Therefore, the guy wonders if his guesses are correct. He tells Hopper to prepare a secret letter, and Hopper asks who the recipient will be. And the captain of the North claims that he will write a letter to the king of men. The servant is a little surprised by this. And then he obeys his master. When Noel is about to leave, another servant approaches him. He asks for forgiveness for interfering, but the fact is that something happened to the gentleman's companion. That same evening, the main character and the maid were already sitting on a picnic. The girl argued that when you drink alcohol, it is important to choose a suitable place. The same cat was sitting next to them, and I asked Julia if she could ask her something. The maid says that of course she will help in any way she can. Then the young lady asks how the girl would have responded if she knew she would be killed. The maid says that this is a very serious matter, and usually in such a situation a person would probably hide somewhere. The young lady thinks that she was worrying in vain, and she needs to get out of there as soon as possible. But Julia continues to say that she would try to fight. She claims that running away from fate is not a solution to the problem because she knows what will happen in the future. The maid pours wine into a glass and says that she would try to face fate so as not to regret anything. After which she says that her answer probably seemed too frivolous to the lady, although you cannot go straight to fight, but try to avoid being hit from the side. Then the main character drinks a whole glass of this wine at a time, and after that thanks her maid. She claims that Julia helped her a lot. The young lady wonders why she only thought about how to avoid her fate, because if she and Zion had left, what would have happened to Noel and Rachel without a companion? But these two will face the tragedy that happened in the original novel, and the girl wonders whether this is the best outcome of events. After all, she wants a different future for them. But suddenly, the cat jumps up and screams. The lady with pink hair asks what happened to the baby, and then she sees Maria. The woman furiously says that she still couldn't figure out where the wine had gone. She grabs Julia and says that this is all her doing. Another maid approaches the lady and asks if she liked the wine. She also says that this is their chief cook. Then the main character says that the wine is very sweet, and she doesn't know who insisted on it, but the aroma is wonderful. The woman releases the maid and says that the lady knows how to drink alcohol, and if she wants, the woman will recommend a better drink and suitable snacks. The main character agrees. And now the servant tells his master that his companion got very drunk. The young lady gestures with a glass of strong drink, having fun with all her might. She cries out that this is true, and the plot development along the lines of, "My real brother, whom I lost 10 years ago, turned out to be the one with whom I almost fell in love after going through numerous trials," is very popular. The servants claim that this is incredible and ask the lady what happened next. The main character thinks a little, and then asks not to address her so formally and to call her by name. In an atmosphere of fun and general cordiality, when everyone is absorbed in alcoholic fun, the servants address the young girl as Mistress Ava, strengthening the feeling of friendship and camaraderie that reigns between everyone at this moment. Ava, turning to them, internally regrets that, despite the informal setting, they still address her using the formal madam, but she realizes that this is inevitable and takes it for granted. At this moment, the main character notices Noel. Upon his appearance, the servants, seized with slight fear and respect, immediately kneel down, demonstrating their respect to the master. However, Noel, not wanting unnecessary ceremony, brushes aside the greetings and asks a question, trying to find out who got the young lady so drunk, causing him concern for her condition. Eva, not paying attention to his concern, offers him a glass of wine, assuring him that the drink is really very tasty and deserves to be tried. At this time, the chef approaches him, who shares his observations, saying that apparently Eva really liked the wine they prepared, but in the end, everything got out of control, which causes him some embarrassment. She adds that they tried to keep the lady from drinking too much alcohol, and if Noel is looking for someone to blame for this situation, then she is ready to take full responsibility, showing a willingness to answer for what happened. But the young lady only hugs Maria and tells Noel not to touch her. The guy is a little shocked by this, and the young lady asks if he knows how difficult it is to prepare food, and they should eat everything that the chefs prepared with such difficulty. But then she turns around and says that she'll probably have another glass, but the young man with black hair takes the glass from her hands. He takes the main character by the hand and claims that drinking a lot is bad for health and she will feel bad for several days. Despite the fact that the main character does not pay attention to the words of her interlocutor, she continues to hold her hand on Noel's chest and is surprised to note how unusually warm and pleasant his touch is, while the servants whisper that apparently the girl really is Noel's faithful companion. Although the young man tries not to show his embarrassment, internally he feels strong excitement and even some confused excitement, realizing that the girl may have had a little too much alcohol, and invites her to retire to the room so that she can rest and recover. However, the main character, not paying attention to his proposal, slowly falls asleep, realizing that she has not allowed herself the luxury of drinking for a long time, and now alcohol seems incredibly sweet and enveloping to her, and sleep will seem like the best way to cope with its effects. But suddenly, the young lady begins to develop wolf ears and a tail, which comes as a complete surprise to all the servants present, who scream in horror and bewilderment, realizing that their mistress is a she-wolf, which they never expected to see. One of the servants, not hiding his surprise and excitement, asks how this could happen to Mrs. Eva, but Noel, wanting to keep the situation under control, strictly orders him to shut up and not talk about what happened. In a serious and decisive tone, he declares that later he himself will announce to everyone about the events of this evening, but warns that if anyone present decides to do this before him and reveal the secret, it will be bad. The captain of the Northern Lands, expressing his rage and hostility towards violators of discipline, declares that anyone who dares to break this rule and spread information before its permission will answer for it with his own head.